of Selectmen. All rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I've been asked to read, not on the agenda, but I've been asked to read an announcement from the town clerk to let the residents of Acushnet know that early voting is underway. It started February 24th and will continue to February 28th from 8 to 4, and Tuesday, February 25th from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the Parting Ways building. So I guess any registered voters eligible to go and vote early. Next item on the agenda, minutes of the February 11th, 2020 regular session meeting. Only comment I'd make on those is I spoke with Mrs. Leonard about the fact that we never really adjourned the first meeting, we recessed it, so this meeting only captures the meeting we had before the public hearing. So I've asked her to add something to the end of the February 11th minutes that say, you know, please see the attached addendum, which we'll review and approve for a transcript of the public hearing or for details regarding the public hearing or something to that effect. But the minutes that we've got for February 11th are fine, but there's gonna be an addendum to those minutes that captures the public hearing that'll be attached, which again we'll approve.
So, Mr. Chairman, we're not approving this. This says this is a draft. There's something about.
Oh, I hadn't seen that. Was that distributed?
I put that with your minutes.
I didn't get that.
So this
Okay.
is a little bit.
I hadn't seen that.
It's just a draft, so I just want to make sure we're not approving this because a lot of the language is.
Bullet points.
kind
Yeah, you said you'd done it. I hadn't seen it. Okay, all right. So we're not going to approve that yet?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda in the meeting of Tuesday, February 11, 2020, regular session, but not public hearing.
I'll second Mr. DeRoche, and we'll review for next time. Please put that on the agenda, the addendum, the public hearing addendum. I'll approve that next time. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Next up, meeting mail. We've got a letter from Charlene Carrier regarding the senior work-off program. And the letter's attached to your agenda, and this, she wrote last year, and we, with Mr. Noble, I spent some time with Mr. Noble exploring what was possible here, and actually spoke with Mrs. Carrier regarding it. And in my conversations with Mr. Noble, we concluded that the work-off program wasn't going to make a lot of sense in the town of Acushnet. And a couple of issues, and I don't recall them all very clearly, but I know I communicated them a year ago with the first letter, was that the program would require us to create jobs that we don't need and pay people for jobs that we don't need and potentially create positions that would be in conflict with union positions. The hours the dollars they could earn were limited. We'd have to add people to the payroll and pay them, deduct taxes, and then it would be on them to use those dollars to pay down their taxes. So we didn't think that was going to work in the town of Acushnet. But what we did do, and I couldn't find it until I found it again today. It was on the front page. It was moved, I believe. But on the Board of Selectmen page on the website, Mr. Noble did a lot of work on tax relief for seniors, veterans, and the disabled. And what's loaded on this page of our website is, again, something called tax relief for seniors, veterans, and disabled. But a bunch of links, a bunch of taxpayer guides to anything people in those categories are eligible for. So there's a taxpayer's guide for legally blind persons. There's a taxpayer's guide regarding senior tax deferral. Taxpayer's guide for seniors 70 and older. There's a hardship. And I know we approve property tax deferrals on a regular basis, people claiming hardship. So there's instructions on how that program works. There's veterans material. So there's a lot of material that's all in one spot here on the town website that, again, Mr. Noble put together as a resource for the residents that wanted to understand what was available to them, to what their rights were. But, and I'm willing to, and either of you certainly can explore the senior tax deferral, the senior tax work, I'm blanking on the name of it, but the conversations that I had with Mr. Noble, and it's been about a year, we concluded that it wasn't something that would make sense in the town of Acushnet. There was another limitation, and it's possible I'm confusing my programs, I believe. Something else we looked at potentially implementing.
Most of them are income guidelines where you have thresholds for income and things of that nature.
There was a program that we looked at that was talking about the poverty threshold in the community that had to be above, and I may be merging my programs that we had discussed at the time.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take you up on your offer to explore this a little further
Right.
and make a motion to table the discussion on this issue.
Perfect.
Until a future date.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. DeRoche. Second on the table?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of the table?
Aye?
Aye. All right, and please. Next item in meeting mail. Got a letter of resignation of Ted Chopper from the Conservation Commission. Mr. Chopper's been on the Conservation Commission for a very long time. I've got a note from Marilee Kelly, who's the conservation agent, who says that he's been a member of the Conservation Commission as long as there has been a Conservation Commission. So Mr. Chopper served the town of Acushnet for a long time, and it's important that residents step up. There are a lot of volunteer opportunities in government in the town of Acushnet, and it's important that residents step forward and volunteer for those opportunities, and Mr. Chopper has for a long, long time. And I, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I'd like to thank him for his service, and I suspect the Conservation Commission's got big shoes to fill with his absence, because there's a lot of institutional memory that comes with being on the Conservation Commission for as long as he was. So thank you, Mr. Chopper, for your service to the town.
Thank you.
That said,
We
we've got...
send Mr. Chopper.
Yeah, can we send him a letter thanking him for his service, please? To be signed by all three of us?
Yes.
He used to be a former selectman in the town of Acushnet as
correct.
well, so his history is long dated with the town of Acushnet and has been very much appreciated, so we could do something to that effect.
I'll
Yeah.
make one of those citation kind of
Yeah,
things.
let's do it.
Nice to
Yeah,
send
let's
to
do
him.
that. We should. Good idea. Thank you, Mr. Gasper. And we've got letters from two individuals asking to be appointed to the Conservation Commission. Do we have two vacancies? We do, okay. So we have, and Richard Pimentel, both residents of the town of Acushnet, asking to be appointed to the Conservation Commission. We're distributed in the meeting package.
Make a motion to appoint Ryan Resendes to the Conservation Commission and Mr. Richard Pimentel to the Conservation.
And I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
I just don't know the dates of where their appointments would end, so we
Yeah, I
just have
have
to check with
to
that.
figure that out.
Put them in the appropriate time slots, whatever slots are available. And if it's a conflict, like there's a 1 and a 3, and we need to figure out, make a decision there, let's, bring that back, I guess. Let's not be, maybe put it on the chair of the Conservation
because it'll
Commission
be-
to see.
It'll be Mr. Chopper's last date, and then the new one, because we haven't had, they've been without
So that
somebody
would
for a
probably
while.
would be a 3-ish year.
Yeah, and whatever Mr. Chopper's year end is.
Okay, so, yeah, if we've got an issue, bring it back, and we'll figure it out. Fourth item in the meeting mail, we got a memo from the town clerk requesting election inspector appointments. She's asking to appoint Margaret Fernandez and Arlene Todd as election inspectors.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to to approve the appointments as presented to us.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye?
And they,
Mr.
Aye.
Guest was yes.
just to recap that, they'll both only be until May 1st, when we
Okay.
do our annual appointments, and then
Okay.
they'll
be on
the
that list. Okay.
I think that might be a good thing for some of our seniors, maybe to look into it, speak with Ms. Labonte for election inspectors, registrars, and things of that. I know there's a small amount of pay that's allocated to those folks, so that might work out for them too. they'd like to, some of the seniors for you.
And those are jobs that
Something for you
those are jobs that exist.
Something for you to think about, so.
And just circling back, just continuing the thought, thanking Mr. Resendes and Mr. Pimentel for stepping up and volunteering to serve the town. Next item on the agenda. Okay, we have an appointment now, that's what it is on the agenda, with Jeff Flake of KP Law to talk about the PJ Keating license request, and this is a follow-up to the public hearing that we had, was it a week ago or 2 weeks?
2 weeks now.
2 weeks, time flies, 2 weeks ago. So just to brief us on that process and where we are and what we need to do next and other issues we should be thinking of.
Okay. Also, I think you've asked me out here to talk a little bit about the entire process. PJ Keating is, as you know, I guess they're wholesale moving their plant from one location on the property to the other, which, you know, in my opinion, is going to trigger more than just this flammable liquid storage tank license. But let's talk about that for a minute. As you know, under the regulations and under the statute, you have to hold a hearing. You've held a hearing. You continued the hearing to a date certain, which I believe is March 25th. You've heard evidence, and the board, after it's heard its evidence, has the opportunity, I suppose you have three options, right? You have option number one, grant the permit. Just grant it as is. Option number two, you grant with a condition. And option number three would be to deny. Let's talk about options 2 and 3, because option number 1, it's pretty easy. You just granted you're here. I think the board needs to keep in mind when they're talking about this permit, and we'll go further down the road as to other permits that may be needed by PJ Keating. But with respect to this permit, you have to have a rational basis for doing anything with the permit, being a denial or a denial with conditions. And I just want to, and I think I read this at the meeting, but I'll read it again. The Board of Selectmen have the discretion to deny or grant with conditions an application for a storage tank license. The grant of the license under 148, Section 13 is a discretionary action by the board, and a court would review the board's decision using an arbitrary or capricious standard, which means essentially you gotta have a basis in the record and the facts that were presented to you to make your determination. Courts have held that factors such as public interest, welfare, noise, traffic, and adjacent residential areas may form the basis of a board's decision to deny or grant with conditions an application under Section 13. Additional factors the board may wish to consider in this particular context of this license is explosive and inflammable, is fire and explosion hazards. Ultimately, the board will need to articulate a rational basis for its decision. So the next step for you is to continue your hearing, and based on the evidence, you have, like I said, you have the three options. I think that based on what we've heard, that I don't, and again, this is solely up to the board, but based on what we've heard, we have heard, I thought, ample evidence of the public interest. We've heard ample evidence regarding the public welfare there, noise, traffic, as it relates to the adjacent residential areas. I will just caution the board when you're making your decision that you need to constrain that to the noise, traffic, and other public safety concerns with respect to that storage tank. Now, I think at the last hearing, you heard an awful lot of residents get up and rightfully complain about other issues, the blasting, the noise, the dust. And I don't know that that was necessarily constrained necessarily to the activities of the storage tanks. So, you know, based on what you heard, I do believe you heard evidence that there will be diesel trucks that go and load these tanks, 6 to 12 trucks a day, at all hours of the day, that will go there, and when they offload their cargo, the flammable liquid, they sit at high idle, so their PTO-driven pumps can pump the liquid into the tanks. So I do believe that, based on that information provided to you, that there is at least evidence of noise, of diesel fumes, I'm sure, of a number of trucks, and of what appears to be unlimited hours. So it would be up to the board. If they wanted to condition it, they could certainly condition it to try to alleviate those aspects of the application. And a denial, you would have to cite similar reasons. I will tell you, courts oftentimes will like to see if a license can be conditioned to address the interests that are impacted, would much rather see a condition than a flat denial. So that's the flammable liquid storage permit.
If we attach conditions with compliances, I assume, right? Comply to this condition, comply to that condition. Is there a period of time they have to act to comply, or are we giving them the license today and, all right, we'll give you a year when the license comes back to comply?
No,
How does that?
any license that's issued with conditions, any license, be it a food storage license, be it a food preparation, any license that's issued with conditions, if there is a violation of those conditions, you don't have to wait for next year for your renewal. You can immediately go in. Typically, the way it is you typically notify them that there's a violation. And typically, they will, at that point, address it or not. And then you can issue, because you're the license granting authority, and they're violating a condition, you could issue a cease and desist letter that says stop all operations until you could come into compliance with your license. If they don't, then we'll likely, either they appeal your cease and desist, or the town goes in and enforces its cease and desist.
Okay, thank you.
But no, you don't have to wait for a whole year.
Okay.
Mr. Gasper, anything?
Can I get off track about the fuel tanks, storage tanks for a minute and go to the soil?
I was going to try to kind of outline the process, and my next one up is soil board permit.
Okay. I have nothing at this time, Mr. Chairman.
I could go, I do want to, I've got a lot of comments I want to say. We've got a representative here from PJ Keating with the fire chief as well. I don't know if either of you are interested in making comments, and reserving my comments till after everyone's spoken, I suppose. But Chief, did you want to add something?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question for council. Among the conditions, the present license, land use license, is for 88,000 gallons of combustible flammable liquids, diesel, gasoline, combined. Does the board have the authority to either enlarge that number or reduce that number during this process?
Well, it would have to have a rational basis for doing it. It has discretion, and if they can find a rational basis based on the evidence and based on the threat to the public safety, noise, and the other factors that I've outlined, they have discretion to condition that permit.
Very good, thank you.
Anything else, Chief? A gentleman from PJ Keating, it's Doug, is it Doug?
Correct.
Doug, I'm sorry, I didn't remember the last name. Anything you want to?
No, I don't wish to add anything this time.
Okay. I'll comment. The public hearing was a bit disturbing. And I've been on the board for give or take 2.5 years, and one of the first things I latched onto, because there was a public hearing 2.5 years ago, was a hearing held by PJ Keating to move the asphalt plant to the front of the road. And from the beginning, I didn't think that was a good idea. I've expressed that to PJ Keating at every opportunity. But at the public hearing and at many subsequent meetings, we heard, and I know PJ Keating is represented that they've tried to make things better, but the neighbors are not seeing the better. And the one that really jumped out at me from the public hearing was the backup, the sound of the backup on the trucks from in the middle of the night. And that's one from 2.5 years ago that PJ Keating said, easy one for us to fix. We're going to put growlers on our equipment, and anybody that doesn't have a growler, we're not going to allow them to back up on the site. And And just something that feels as simple as that to solve has not been solved. And after the meeting, people came up to me and said, this is an issue that continues, the sounds from that facility all night long. And the second one, I went last week, Mr. DeRoche went as well, the North Fairhaven Neighborhood Association held a hearing. They invited, there's a representative from their Board of Selectmen, their state rep was there, residents of the town of Fairhaven also expressing a lot of concern with the truck traffic coming out of the PJ Keating facility and the volume of truck traffic, the trail of dust off the trucks as they travel through Fairhaven Village and down Alden Road. And so it's beyond an Acushnet issue, it's a Fairhaven issue. And at the first hearing, I said this, and I'll say it again, I keep saying it, I believe PJ Keating has the right to operate their business in the town of Acushnet, but your right to operate your business ends at your property lines. And once you leave your property lines, you need to be respectful of your neighbors and the town of Acushnet and the town of Fairhaven, and that's really not happening. I mean, the dust, the noise, the volume of trucks is just out of control. And people that have lived on South Main Street and other areas in town that have lived there for years are just, we don't know what the volume of trucks is. I suspect you must, but just commented that their perception is it's just grown exponentially. The volume of truck traffic down South Main Street and even down Main Street in Acushnet. I guess it depends on where the trucks are going. They're actually running through the town of Acushnet and down Main Street, probably down 105 or to Wareham or whatever it is they're going. But just a huge volume of truck traffic. And again, the trucks are leaving a trail of dust and they're bouncing up and down all night long. And I think the residents of Acushnet and the residents of Fairhaven have a right to live their lives without being disturbed by the operations of PJ Keating. So as we consider the license for this facility and the renewal of your soil board permit, very honestly, the concerns of the neighbors of the facility, I take very serious. I'm very disturbed, I guess, and I think these people have been living in the shadow of PJ Keating for years, and are at the point where they feel powerless to do anything about it. And I think the Board of Selectmen, and I think the Planning Board, and I think the Board of Health and the Soil Board have failed them for 30 years, and I think it's time that changes. And I think PJ Keating needs to figure out a way to be a better neighbor, because I think the town of Acushnet needs to help them figure out a way to be a better neighbor. And we're going to do our part to help you be a better neighbor. End of my comments.
Well, that segues beautifully into my next area, and that is, so you have a flammable liquid storage permit. The next on the line would be under your soil board permit, and it's a bit of a hybrid. As you guys know, there's a soil board, but ultimately it's the Board of Selectmen that has to approve the permit. And it says, no permit for removal shall be granted unless the Board of Selectmen finds that such removal, subject to the conditions imposed by the permit, will not be contrary to the best interests of the town, and no removal operation subsequently conducted under such permit shall continue contrary to such interests. And I'm going to tell you what the interests are in a second. Quarry up there, and they're quarrying the aggregate, I believe, for the asphalt. So the two are intertwined, and I believe are legitimately under this permit. For this purpose, removal of earth material shall be considered contrary to the best interests of the town, which, 1, will be injurious or dangerous to the public health or safety, will produce noise, dust, or other effects observable at lot lines in amounts seriously objectionable or detrimental to the normal use of the adjacent property, 3, will result in transportation of materials on ways giving access to the land in question, which will cause traffic congestion or hazards. 4, will result in transportation which will cause undue injury to the roadway surfaces. 5, will result in change in topography and cover, which will be disadvantageous to the most appropriate use of the land on which the operation is conducted. Or 6, will have a material effect on the health or safety of persons living in the neighborhood in the use or on the use of amenities of adjacent land. So as you can see there, the Board of Selectmen, and it says subject conditions imposed on this permit, and the Soil Board have a tremendous amount of discretion here in determining, one, if this permit issued would be a detriment to the public interest as it's defined here, and legitimately condition this permit to prevent those kind of injuries to the public interest. It says here, the board shall impose reasonable conditions designed to safeguard the neighborhood and the town as follows. It goes on to talk about the bare bone, the sloping of it after, but I don't believe that necessarily talks about or prohibits the Board of Selectmen and the Soil Board from imposing conditions that will make this permit so that it is not injurious to the public interest as that has been outlined in the preamble there. Section 4C talks about earth removal activities and lawful operation on any parcel at the time this bylaw is adopted may continue unless and until abandoned for more than 12 consecutive months. That would appear to be a grandfathering clause. And I think that it's reasonable to interpret this to say, if the zoning, for whatever reason, did not allow an earth removal operation on that parcel, it would be grandfathered. But nowhere in this document does it say that any grandfathered operation does not have to comply with this soil board bylaw and/or permit requirements. Additionally, as we all know, things have changed. I think at one point, P.J. Keating was making an argument that they were grandfathered on the site, and they very well may have been, because at that point, they were no longer operating as a lawful, they were operating as a pre-existing non-conforming use. Well, we have subsequently changed our bylaw to make them a conforming use under zoning. So, to the extent that there was any grandfathering that was allowed under the zoning bylaw, that grandfathering is no longer necessary nor appropriate, because they're a conforming use and they have to conform to the bylaw. So, in my opinion, going forward, the soil board, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, have a lot of power to, again, condition this permit to protect those interests that are outlined on Section 3 in the permit. And again, if there are no conditions that could be imposed on this permit, then in my opinion, the board could deny the permit. However, again, I have to caution you, as I did before, that courts want to see
Arbitrary and capricious.
Well, yeah, and if you can condition a permit to limit those activities or those injuries that you see, then the court's going to want you to do that. And there's one thing that I often find when I advise boards is they say, yeah, we could put X condition on this permit, but they won't follow it. So we're going to deny the permit. That's not, the fact that you don't think they'll comply with a condition is not necessarily meaning that condition couldn't address that interest. Compliance.
But just question. So, and we scheduled a follow-up public hearing on March 25th.
Yep.
Is that necessary? I'm just trying to understand the
Yes.
timeline.
Yes.
I think people got to say everything they needed to say at the first hearing. What's the purpose of the second hearing?
For you to close the public hearing, and the evidentiary portion of the public hearing, and for you to deliberate and make your
We can't
determination.
deliberate at a Board of Selectmen meeting?
No. You do.
It's got to be a continuance of the public
It's got to be a
hearing.
continuance of the public hearing. That's why we continued it to a date certain.
All right, I was just assuming we were there listening to testimony and that we could deal with the matter that was presented at the public hearing tonight if you wanted to.
No, we want to give PJ, although PJ Keating has a close eye on our agendas, and they're here tonight, but they may have other people in the audience, or you did not close the evidentiary portion of that hearing, so they may want to bring in some additional evidence or make additional arguments to you before you close it, and then and you deliberate and make your determination.
Go ahead, Mr. Gasper, go.
So, Mr. Blake, you've read pretty much what I read at the public hearing as far as the bylaws, and my questions were, what is the grandfathering clause? And we're basically being told because of the rezoning, there are no grandfather clauses.
I think to the extent that they would try to claim that they're pre-existing non-conforming use, they're no longer pre-existing non-conforming use, they're conforming use, and they have to come into compliance with this bylaw and with the zoning bylaw, to the extent that there are any obligations under our zoning bylaw. There are not a lot. It's an allowed use by right in that district.
So, in the very end of the bylaw, so earth removal bylaw, it says, after the operation has proceeded 600 feet, the operator shall slope grade and reseed the initial 300 feet before or during the period when he or she begins work on the following 300 feet. Thereafter, he shall proceed in advance his operations integral distances of 300 feet while he simultaneously grades, slopes, loams, reseeds the previous integral distance of 300 feet. So what I get out of that is, if you have a 600-foot hole now, you technically should have filled 300 feet prior to going after the next 300 feet. Is that correct?
Well, I guess
Yeah, right, that doesn't really
Yeah, I know.
apply, but-
the way I read it, it would be more of a, if you were going kind of this way and taking out a side of a bank, if you're going straight down, I don't know that you can fill, you can go down 600, I don't know that you can fill 300 feet and then get down below. So the way I read that, it would be more of a situation where
That's what I'm
not
talking
a
about. So
hole.
if you have an area, well, you do technically, because you need to fill it, is what this says.
Well, as they finish the
First 300
activity, they would then have to go and reclaim it. And that would contemplate, I agree with you, it would contemplate them reclaiming as they go along. I don't know enough about the nature of the business, but if it's a hole,
It's a hole.
well, but you can't reclaim the first 300 feet of a hole and continue to dig. If it was a situation where they were removing, I've often seen gravel where they'll take literally a ridge, and they'll take the whole ridge and they'll make it flat, and they usually give it to schools and they make fields out of it. But as they were going along and they do 300 feet, if there was a bank here, you would have to reclaim that. But here, I don't know enough about the nature of the business, and that's something that would probably better be answered by a consultant that we may have.
So, if we're thinking about conditions on the license, the process to put those conditions on the license, we could certainly get our arms around what those might be prior to the next hearing on, it's actually the 24th of March, right? We could figure out what we want those conditions to be.
You could figure out what you want those conditions, you could deliberate about those.
And we could do that as a Board of Selectmen?
No,
No.
no. You can't do anything with that permit request. Here we're talking about the overall,
Process, yeah.
what's going on. But that's best left during the public hearing process. Now, certainly, you, as an individual board member, can think about the evidence that you've seen and think about a condition that you may or may not want to put on there.
I guess so.
And you can deliberate with your board members during that night, and if you decide that you want to deliberate again, you could continue the meeting again,
But it's got to be as a continuation of that public.
out in the public. The public and the applicant have the right to be here and listen to what you're saying and how you're deliberating.
But, I mean, we posted this meeting with an agenda that says we're talking about it too, but that doesn't, it's different. Okay, I'm just trying to understand.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Gentlemen? Anything else, gentlemen?
Not at the present time.
Chief, anything?
Not at this time.
Doug, I'm sorry, last one, Doug,
Vigneault. Vigneault, V as in Victor, I-G-N-E-A-U. Vigneault.
Thank you, Doug, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Anything to add, Mr. Vigneault?
No, sir.
No, okay, thank you.
Okay, so number 3. I
There's
don't-
more.
Yeah, and wait, there's
But
more.
wait, there's more.
As I
That was
said,
option 2.
as I sat through the public hearing the other night, I saw a lot of people, a lot of neighbors get up and have a lot of issues. Most of them talked about dust, about traffic, about the backup noise. And again, under your soil permit, I believe that that's something that could be conditioned. And frankly, I think it could be a legitimate condition with respect to certainly the trucks that are loading the flammable storage tanks to have the, you call them growlers, the backup, the white noise backup rather than the beep, 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 beep. But I heard what I thought were a lot of claims of nuisance. And the Board of Health has extraordinarily broad discretion in addressing nuisances. The blowing of dust, the noise at night, possibly constant banging of trucks, lights that shine into neighborhoods, those are all nuisances and are legitimately regulated by the Board of Health. The Board of Health, I believe, has a nuisance abatement plan, or at least I think we reviewed one of those. And they can certainly enforce that nuisance abatement plan. And again, because they may or may not have been doing that, when the facility was a mile back, we all know that the facility is now going to be front and center with the residential neighborhoods. And there's just gonna be more of a conflict. And that would be the third way of addressing these.
Through the Board of Health.
Through the Board of Health,
Board of Health's
addressing,
very engaged in this.
addressing these neighbors' concerns. It's not as, well, they have the ability to identify the nuisance. They have the ability to send out a cease and desist letter telling PJ Keating that they are creating a public nuisance. PJ Keating can then come in, talk with them, or not. And if they continue to create the nuisance, the Board of Health then can take action to force them to abate the nuisance.
Okay.
So, those are the kind of the 3 broad jurisdictions. The Board of Selectmen are at least in 2 of the rings.
Anything else, Attorney Blake?
I don't have anything, but certainly if you guys have additional questions or comments.
Nope, this time I'm all set.
Ms. Hebert, anything?
Okay.
No? No?
I forgot the guy's name.
Doug.
Mr. Vino?
Doug?
Vino.
Can I call you Doug? Mr. Vino? Can I ask you a question?
You can ask.
That's fair.
The question that I have is, why didn't PJ Keating come to the Board of Selectmen and engage with the Board of Selectmen before you took the initiative to move that asphalt facility?
I wasn't working at PJ Keating at the time.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. I think
We're all
there's
set.
nothing else we can do with this tonight, so
Yep.
let's move on.
Thank you,
Our
Mr. Blake.
Our 5:15 appointment, Mr. Isaac, Mr. Flynn from the Golf Committee with the budgets. I'm sorry? Yeah, Jeff, I think you could. I mean,
Okay.
you got a lot of fun ahead, so
Yeah.
you're welcome to stay. Just-
You guys are all set. I will see you on, I thought I had the 25th. Is that the 24th?
This is the 25th, I believe, is the correct date.
What's a Wednesday? That's a
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
yeah.
The 24th will be a Tuesday.
When did we announce at the public hearing?
I've got it in my calendar for Tuesday, the 25th.
The 20th.
The 24th.
Tuesday, the 24th.
That's what I had too, Tuesday the 24th.
Hold on, am I in the wrong?
And that would be here.
March 24th, I'm sorry. Yeah, the last one was on, I don't know what I'm doing. I've got it for Tuesday, March 24th, is that correct?
At 6 o'clock. That's what I had.
That is, okay.
You've got Tuesday, the 24th?
Tuesday, the
We
24th of
announced at the
March.
public hearing, though. That's what's important, right?
Yeah, no, we're
Very
gonna have to
important.
review
Well, we'll look at the meeting
video.
video tomorrow.
Whatever we said at the public hearing, that's the day it needs to be.
I have.
I
already
put it in
got
my calendar on
I've
site.
got the 24th.
I'm pretty sure, because, well,
So-
we went with Tuesday at 24.
All right. All right, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Be safe.
These budgets yet? They're not budget.
Oh, yeah, I think I sent updated ones, so.
Mine is on the desk, yeah, mine is upstairs.
But I did send you some, send you one.
I can, yeah.
It didn't come email, it didn't come email.
In your.
What is that? Budget's next. Mr. Flynn's at the podium.
But the Jeopardy theme's playing in the
I'm
background.
guessing we're doing
The
golf.
Jeopardy theme's playing in the
I
background.
heard my name called, so I think it was time to come
I
on.
don't know.
What is the golf tournament?
Yeah, we're good,
Talk to Mr.
technology's
Bonner.
we're gonna catch up with you. Go ahead. Mr. Flynn, welcome, representing the golf committee.
So I guess we're here just to do an overview of the budget request for next year. I think you all have a copy in front of you.
I will shortly.
Just email. Just so I can email.
Something about this, yeah. The others as well. Yeah, go ahead, I'll catch up. Thank you.
Right, so I'm not sure if you've got it in the same format that I do, 3 pages. So the first page starts off with just the reserve amount of 100,000. It's level funded from last year. We didn't even spend any of it last year. That's there in case of a true emergency. We don't have to come back to various boards. Our intent is not to spend that money, but it's there as a safekeep. So then we move down to the salaries. Pretty much an even 2% across all the lines, for a subtotal of golf course salaries, $536,035. Read those under guidance from general town expectations of salary increases for next year, 2% for everybody.
Yeah, we're trying to do that, is trying to put a science to it and look at actual cost of living. And last year we rounded up, this year we rounded down, but actually looking at what the cost of living is out in the world, and I think it was,
2.3, you said?
2.3, and
Because I was actually looking at it for my own job earlier today, it's 2.3 as of January, so.
Okay, yeah, so we tried to be a little bit more scientific, and it was 2.3, but last year it was 1.8, we rounded up to 2, and the board decided to round the 2.3 down to 2, so it's, I think it had been arbitrary in the past, and so, go ahead, sorry.
So there we are with the 2. So then the next page on a paper copy at least goes down to all the expense categories for the operations and maintenance side. Pretty much that comes to roughly a 4% increase on just the expenses, but it's really only about $20,000 from $492 up to $512,000. You notice a lot of the lines are level funded, and then some of the lines for certain costs such as rentals and leases of equipment, actual to the extent that we don't put in, so you'll see some pluses. Some of them look like large percentage pluses, but they're really not large dollar amount pluses, only a couple $1,000s. Offset by negatives in other areas as well. To bring it down to the $20,000 increase, $512,191 subtotal. And then really the only other category is the long-term debt, which has 2 lines. Principal is actually up a little bit, interest is down a little bit, for a net change of $1,000 for the year in long-term debt. Bringing the total to $1 million, if I can read the blue, $1,495,826, which is an overall 2.2% increase. Now you compare that, that's inclusive of the $100,000 from the reserve being held on the side, so it's really only an operating budget of $1,395,826. And I believe our revenue last year was $1,465,000, so even the projected expenses are within what last year's revenue was.
Is the course, did it close for winter?
It closed mid-December,
Right.
usually opens mid-March, depending on, we've got
This
Steve
has been a
Tibble's.
weird winter, right?
Yeah. I was concerned about obviously the turf health and whether, I know they dig down and he doesn't want it, say, melted on the top, frozen underneath, and you're tearing roots, et cetera. So we leave it up to Steve Tibble's as to when we reopen the course, but typically by mid-March is our hope.
And how's this year tracking? How's fiscal 2020 tracking?
So as of
I know
when-
you're in a seasonal business, we're halfway through it, right?
So I believe, so I think I'm not wrong, I believe it was about year-to-date through December when we closed, the revenue was about 65,000 ahead of what the plan,
Oh,
the
good.
projected plan was. So even if we break even, so to speak, with March through June, we'd end up 65,000 ahead of the
Ahead, yeah.
projections.
Yeah, so it's
All
certainly-
dependent on weather, right?
Absolutely. You know, if
We
we
get a
have,
rainy season through April, we're done.
right, we have a mild March and April, a lot of people are gonna be out. If it's rainy, then they're not. So that's
Like
it's
you-
a
like
big
you
turning
said,
point,
if it
March and
wasn't-
April.
If it
you
wasn't
know.
for the frosted ground right now, we could be out. A lot of golfers would want to be out right now. I mean, we've had some
Right.
unbelievable January, 70 degrees, since when? I mean, but you can't because like you said, the state of reasons, the grass gets ripped up a lot easier and frost.
Exactly, and then you're gonna be stuck with more maintenance costs over a
correct.
couple rounds of golf, so.
So you don't really have much going on here. I mean, your repairs of equipment, it's only gone up $3,000. Your leases, your rentals and leases, that's golf carts, right? And only golf carts?
The cart has its own line, golf cart leases, about the third line, fourth line from the bottom.
Oh, yeah, I see that.
And the other
Yep.
leases are, you know, when they bring in equipment short-term to do certain things, such as, you know, overseeding, aerating,
Special
blowing out
things
the
that you don't need to
sprinklers.
purchase, it's a one-time,
Exactly.
one-time a season kind of piece of equipment.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, minor changes and
Yep.
looks pretty
As long as
good.
the overall, it's
And you have to
minor.
pay for your trash now?
I knew somebody was gonna ask that.
Well, it's still a 100% increase.
I know.
Well, that's- It's really an infinite increase, since it's going from 0 to 5,000.
That's right.
So, I mean, that's what we're being told is the way it was redone, that
Right.
it used to just kind of be included in the overall pickup, and now we might be getting charged for that. And I know that Dana was working on, was there a better solution, or, you know, minimize the amount of pickups needed to decrease that, minimize that cost at least.
Okay, yep.
You guys have the small dumpsters,
Yeah, there's two, there's one by the clubhouse and one by maintenance shed.
maintenance shed, right?
But they try to, I believe Dan said they try to schedule so it's only one dump run, you know, the truck will go there and pick up both at the same time, so you're not wasting money on pickups.
Sure, sure. It's pretty good to me.
Yep, seems in line.
And there was the 100,000 in reserve fund, same thing in this year, and you haven't, that wasn't reserved for capital expenditures, was it? It was just,
That was, no, that was more, that was reserved for unforeseen, say that, you know, revenues way down, or expense comes out of left field, it was an area that we could come back to you guys and the finance committee to approve an expense transfer.
well, you have a
without
good
having to
year,
go back to town
you
meeting.
sell more product, and, right,
Absolutely.
which is a good thing, you need
Right.
money to buy additional product.
Exactly, the pro shop
This
stock is an
This
expense
is
line.
$100,000 taken from the reserve account, the surplus account.
Correct.
That we did in the budget season a few years ago. We took that, we implemented that, because in order for you to expend from surplus line items, you have to hold a special town meeting to do so. So we were a little more proactive now, and we took that money and we said, we'll put it in the budget, i.e. not to be spent unless something unforeseen, emergency and unforeseen came up.
Exactly, especially with only one town meeting a year without having
Right,
to have
and
a
we don't do
special.
special town meetings
Like you're on
anymore
board
in the
with the finance
fall, so,
committee.
you know, it worked out pretty well. I think it's a good idea that we have it in there in case they do come and something, you know, $20,000, $30,000 or a pump, a water pump, an irrigation pump blows, and that's happened to us in the last 5, 6 years or whatever, we replaced one of them.
Exactly.
If that were to occur, you're stuck, they don't have the money in the budget to appropriate, now we have money in the budget, they just come to the board and say, we have an unforeseen emergency use. It's almost like a reserve fund that the town would use, but they're not part of that, so
Right, so
it's
And
worked out.
you didn't use any of
We
it.
have not used any this
10
year.
months into the year.
Last year,
6, 8 months into the year.
exactly,
Can I ask you gentlemen a question? The tent,
yes.
we had an article for, I think it was 150 out of surplus that we took for equipment expenditures.
Yep.
Was the tent part of that? We talked about spending some money on a new tent because it was ripped up.
I think,
Right,
Has the Board of Selectmen approved the expenditure for that tent?
no.
So when are we
need to
gonna do
come
that?
Before you. The only thing you approved was the fairway mower. So all of the other expenses we've been accumulating, we need to come before you and get final approval.
It is something that you guys are looking to do this year though, right? Is a
Yeah, we
tent,
are.
replacing that tent?
Yep, Dana already has the quotes, it's something that they've installed, you know, end of March, so to speak, so I know it's ready to go. I think it just probably needs to officially be put in front.
Right.
How long do you think, once you come to the board, how long do you think it's gonna take to get the tent installed, in place, tied down, so it's ready for use? Because we don't wanna really be doing while we have golfers swarming all over the place.
That's a very quick process,
Yeah, like a week thing.
yeah.
And I mean, they go through it every year, even when we don't buy a new tent, they take down the existing tent and store it over the winter and then put it back up. So it's, the process of putting it up is built into their schedule every year anyway.
Okay, cool. So you guys will be coming shortly?
I would think the next meeting, we'll put it on the agenda. we have a list of items that we are proposing.
The board's, as you can see tonight's agenda, we're pretty packed up.
Yeah.
And if you go up into the selectmen's room, we try to be proactive and put the next following meeting, so things are already
Yes.
piling up. And we're trying to limit our meetings so that we're not here for 3 hours every Tuesday night. And now we're doing
If
weekly.
not the
for the
next
budget.
meeting, the meeting after.
Yeah, I'm just giving you guys a heads up so that if you try to be put on the agenda and there's too much stuff already on that, we don't want to hold you guys up at the golf, so.
Sure.
Thank you.
Good, all set, gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn, Mr. Isaac, thank you. Thank you.
2027 is when the borrowing disappears?
Correct.
Yeah, still that's a large payment. I think there's still a small tailing.
Yeah, it was
28, but 27 in effect, yeah.
27. Okay, thank you.
Board of Health, is anybody coming from the Board of Health? I mean, I think this is on, the Board of Health certainly submits their own budget and appears before the Finance Committee, but this is on because of
I think that's a
the Assistant Health Agent.
Right.
No one,
All right, well, why don't we, let's look at their budget, I suppose, and... Well,
Do you
so
wanna-
this is
or
for
do you wanna-
the Finance Committee to do. I mean, they're elected officials with their own budget. I'm looking,
Do you want to pass over and see if they, we're trying to reach out and see if they'll be coming?
Yeah.
Joe and Jim.
well, their appointment was at,
Yeah.
Can I just make a couple of comments?
yeah, go ahead, Mr. Gaspar.
So, I'm questioning some salaries already because they're not making any sense to me. And I know that last year was a funky year with wage and classification and certain people were moved around, but I'm still trying to do calculations and I'm not coming up with the right numbers that's forecasted for this year for salaries. And I know that last year, Mr. Noble changed all the budgets based on a leap year. Well, do we all know, and people got extra pay?
I never followed that.
But do we know what day the leap year falls on? It's Saturday, so they don't work the extra day.
The leap year is a Monday, it's a Monday and a Tuesday, with the 2 extra days this year.
And this Saturday is
So-
29th, the extra
so-
day.
Yeah, but when you look at the full year, you look at the start of your fiscal year and the end. So for us, the start was a Sunday, but the end is a Tuesday.
So counting work days.
Yeah, so for work days, there were 52.4 for the 2 extra days for the leap year, but then for people who work town hall hours, like the hourly employees, it was 52.486 to account for the long
Yeah, I
Tuesday.
think that's a bad practice that we got involved in last year with him manipulating that. That's
just-
kind of crazy because you can't make any sense. I mean, I know what the hourly rates are, I've got them here, and I still don't agree with the numbers here. And it's just too hard for all of us to try to keep track of what's really going on in salaries. I think that's bogus when we talk about a leap year. It happens, once every 4 years?
Mhm. If I can, so that's not somebody's annual salary per se, it's making sure that you have budgeted enough money to cover the time while they're there. So and for the record, I haven't had time to check all of the salaries, but I will be checking all of the salaries. The people who are on wage and class, especially what was voted, what I got that was voted was an hourly rate for people. So that hourly rate would be getting the 2%, and then we would calculate that next year as just a regular 52.2.
We need to do some, make
So
sure
what-
that these salaries, because I know that this one's wrong and his contract, what his contract says with the
Who we
Board of
talking-
Health
who
voted
we
is
talking-
on
who we talking
Mr.
about?
Correa, he's
Mr.
health
Correa,
agent.
okay, yep.
And I hate to talk about him, but we're talking about his budget right now, so
Yep.
I just don't want a continuance of this, crap going on. His contract doesn't reflect what the wage and class was done, so his contract was voted on June 25th, 2019, and it says 67,881. That's not correct. That's what I'm trying to say. So contracts now, because of the way that it was kind of incorporated at the last minute and putting numbers into salaries, nothing's coinciding, Julie. So what we need to do is check contract, what we have in contracts, and make sure it reflects the proper salary, because it doesn't here. I've already done my homework on this one, because it's the first one that I'm looking at, and it's already incorrect.
Yeah.
So I'm very concerned about that, because when payroll looks at a contract, they say this is what the pay is supposed to be, because that's what town accountant and town treasurer does.
Yeah.
And it's not jiving.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is I know what the wage and class, because I have that information in here, what was given,
Yep.
and I have all the salaries of all the department heads, hourly wage, and it doesn't work out to this number.
Okay.
So I'm just
Okay.
concerned about that. I want to make sure that it's accurate to the numbers, so
Yeah.
that we don't lose track of you know, the difference in salaries, and people are
Absolutely.
getting different percentages than others are, so I'm just concerned about that.
Yeah, he made an adjustment, I think, from the, it was always wacky to me, or confusing to me would be a better word. Made an adjustment from the pay scale to the leap year, and I really never followed the adjustments.
We never did that before,
There's a
though.
bit of confusion, I guess, so if you, maybe
No,
help
I
us
can give you all the-
understand.
No, yeah, and I can give you all the calculations. So the other confusing part when you guys got the wage and class was that the salary scale that was built was based on 52 flat weeks, which, I mean, we very rarely have 52 flat weeks. You always have an extra day. So the annual amounts that were on that wage and class were all incorrect for FY20 at least, because again, it's leap year. So when we plugged in onto the payroll system, we looked at the hourly rate that was approved on everyone's step, because that's what everything else was based off of.
So we
was
know
the
how many
hourly
hours
rate.
they're gonna work over the course of the year, and that becomes the number that gets,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I did. So I used hourly rate now because I know that that's something that we changed over to. I know we put
Yeah.
a salary in the contract, but it also defines by an hourly rate. So I know what the hourly rate is, and it doesn't work out to this number. This number's too high.
Yeah, and again, so I haven't checked the FY21
So
ones yet.
I
but
know
we
what you're
will
saying
do
now
it.
because, you know, there's an extra, it's usually 52.245, I think the calculation is for a leap year, and they add one day or whatever it is because it occurs, so.
So that's why on a lot of these salaries, you'll see, even though they got a 2% increase, like the salaries are not 2%. A lot of them are 1.5.
1.5, yeah.
Some of them are.
Because again,
Because
it's,
that's jumping down, that's a negative adjustment off the leap year.
right. So people are still in their checks getting a 2% increase, but you're trying to
That's where you
budget for
catch-
the
that's where you
year
catch up.
It's
based
still
on what
over
your
though.
fiscal year has.
It's still over.
Yeah?
This number's
Yeah.
still low. See, this is the wage and cost right here, times 2%, comes up to 69,912. He's at 70 and change. And he does have pay coming, $700 from the soil board, but that should not be reflected here in his pay, in this budget. That's all I'm
Right.
saying.
So yeah, so we'll definitely check in. I can give you the calculations too for this year and
Please, yeah,
next
just help
year,
us reconcile.
as we do it,
Help us
yeah.
reconcile it.
Absolutely.
Mr.
Sure,
Director.
it could.
Mr.
The
Director.
assistant health agent, that is being advertised now,
Yes,
correct?
yes, and that's a
And
position.
we have some people applying, or is that up to the Board of Health to tell us?
It's
They're
the
going-
Board of Health
It's
right
the
now,
Board of
yeah.
Health?
And so they've advertised because they have money in an article from 2 years ago, I think it was, or maybe it was last year, I forget now,
Mhm.
where we appropriated 50,000 for a consultant. So what they're posting the job for now is still utilizing that money that was appropriated by town meeting
Okay,
So,
in the last few years.
you want to stay on that one? Because I still have a question on that too.
sure, go ahead, Mr. Gaspar.
So on the same subject matter, I did look at this salary, and we talked about $30,700. And I looked online, and the health agents, on the Board of Health, still hiring, says 30 to 32,000 bucks. But we also appropriated 15,000 for the part-time health agent. And we said we're gonna take the rest of it we were gonna take that out of the Board of Health's budget. So if you add the 15 to this 30, that puts it at $45,000 salary, and he's advertising for a 19 and a half position for 30 to 32. So why has he got 30 in here if we're taking 15 out of the soil board's
Oh, okay.
budget? So that would be 45 if you paid all that in.
Are you talking about the portion that's paid by PJ Keating? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about we put
So-
$15,000 in the soil board budget for the part-time guy or girl that was supposed to be hiring to do this, and he's taking some because I guess some of the salary would be to do Title V inspections.
Do you have the soil board
No.
budget?
Soil Board doesn't have
Yeah, I
anything
got it
added
in
to
here,
it.
but not this.
Yeah,
one.
no, Soil Board doesn't have anything added to it. Soil Board was level funded.
So there's no salary line item?
So you didn't put any soil
Nothing new.
board?
Soil Board has a $700 or $600 stipend that Joe currently gets.
Correct.
And there's money for the secretary, but there was no new money added for
There's no
FY21.
money for, there's no money for
No.
that, so
This
it's all.
is the
it's
only
all
money.
okay.
I didn't know, I thought when we talked, Mr. Cabral, in the past, when we were giving us updates, yeah, and this is last year's budget, of course, there's nothing there, it's only at $2,100, but I thought when we were talking, we were doing 15,000.
I thought it was gonna
From
be
there?
split between the. soil
Yeah,
board and-
exactly,
So
so I'm
last
just,
year,
I guess
yeah.
I was just misled on that whole, how the appropriation was gonna happen for that
So last
position.
year, if it was last year that we did the article, originally, both the Soil Board and the Board of Health appropriated, I think it was 25,000 each I might be, my mind might be off right now.
That's fine.
And so they both appropriated an amount in their operational budget, and then we pulled it out and we said, we're not sure what we're doing, if we're hiring a person or a consultant at this point, so we pulled out both 25s and made a $50,000 article at town meeting for a consultant. So that's what they still have that they're working off of, where if they hire the person, say tomorrow, they find someone, they hire
Yeah,
them.
Woodard and Curran
They
is
would-
coming out of
They
that.
would be using that money, and
We did
that,
some work.
so the person who they hire potentially, if we don't appropriate this, they're not gonna have an appropriation, their funding ends.
I understand, I was just on the assumption that 50% of that pay was coming from the soil board, and 50% of it would be put in the Board of Health, because he does talk, if you read his advertisement, it's seems to be a little bit more geared to a Board of Health, secondary Board of Health agent, which I was kind of caught off guard with, that except Title V's and started talking about all of that, so it wasn't really talking, it said some things about the quarry operation, but it wasn't really, and
Yep,
I guess in our bylaws, where I read to the people at the public hearing, that said that we can actually back charge them for things that we expend for the soil board permit. So I read that to the people for a reason, that it shouldn't be coming from the taxpayers of Acushnet to support monitoring the PJ Keating facility,
And
right?
the license
So-
fee did go up, but it hasn't gone up enough, in my opinion. I don't think, I still, we're not charging.
16,000 now?
so.
I think it's 15, yeah, we're not charging.
16. So accounting wise, we're paying for the person, so we have to appropriate the expense in our operational budget. But even if we have PJ Keating cover it, so right now, like, we have 30,000 that we're appropriating. We know that we have the soil permit to 16,000. So PJ Keating is paying, we say they're paying for it, but they're giving 16,000 and it's going into the general fund.
16
So
or
over-
15? 16?
I think it's 16.
16.
So overall, that
Yeah,
16,000 hitting the general fund, the expense is part of the general fund, they will offset each other in that sense.
Sure.
But we still have to appropriate it somewhere, we can't put it in a, a separate account or have them pay it directly, because that would become a conflict. So this is how it's budgeted, this is the only amount that we have in the current operational budget for this part-time person. I know what you're saying, they've talked about having it split between the two departments before, but I do know there has been talk, Joe has mentioned, they will be doing majority PJ Keating work, but in PJ Keating's off-season, they don't want to have no justification for keeping this employee on the book, so that's why they would continue to be under the health department, so that, like right now, when PJ Keating has less, going on, that person could also help out with other things under the health
Things, health
department.
inspections, and yeah, that routine.
Okay, very good.
All right, so moving on, next point, Mr. Merritt, you were watching TV, I suspect, right? Because your timing's perfect.
No, I was on an inspection.
You weren't, all right, well then you're late. What are you doing here so late? But you're up next, you're lucky, you're good, you're good.
Wait, we're up until 7 on Tuesday.
Hey, what time was he scheduled? Honestly, he must have been watching us on TV because he was scheduled for 5:35, so that's all right.
Joe had a customer too, so that's why he was, and they have a meeting now at
Okay,
6, so.
we can tell them we're good, we don't.
Yeah, if there's any other questions you have for him.
Welcome, Mr. Merritt, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to go through your budget, or would you prefer questions, or how do you want to?
Well, I don't have a copy of it, I'm sorry, I just came right from the car, so if somebody has one, I can, my budget's fairly simple, so
It's town buildings and building development, right? Town buildings.
3 and 15.
Yeah, my original budget is actually fairly simple, and the town buildings budget and maintenance, temporary, all that stuff, that's relatively new to me. That's never been part of my budget before, but it's become part of my responsibility, so I guess now it will be up to me to monitor it from this time on. There's really relatively no changes in any of them. We've kept everything below the 2%.
Longevity, are those the two kids, Jim, because of where they're at in the contract now? They
This is
must
their
have hit
first year.
4 or 5 year
Yes,
threshold.
this is their first year for longevity.
So it triggered that.
Yes.
Longevity.
How many years?
5.
5 years, I
5
think,
years.
it's $400 for the
5 years.
first step. I think,
Okay.
they're in the town hall contract, he has me.
On the energy line item, budgeted to jump up substantially in fiscal '20, but now you're cutting it by a third in '21. I'm assuming that's based on actual usage?
It has been. I mean, we've been monitoring this through Mass Energy Insight, which is a program from the state, so we know, and because of our conservation, really, we've been able to do that as far as the street light
Yeah, I mean, the 25, the 35 last year is sort of the,
Yeah.
I don't remember the discussion last year, that's the number that looks out of sync with history and where I would expect us to be going. So the number you've got for this year looks fine, it's just the fact that we were up so high for the current fiscal year just seems out of touch with the
Yeah,
reality
like I
of
say,
what we've been doing.
that was not
That
part of
was
my
right.
budget, so that was last year, so I'm worried about this year,
I
so.
assume no, okay, all right,
I mean, it
So,
is what it is.
and again,
good
this,
answer.
Jim is newer to this budget, so he and I sat down and kind of looked at being more real with the numbers and looking at what we might need in the future for the town building, so I think it's a conservative number considering.
Any questions on
Yeah,
that?
no, right, I mean, you got $5,000 in buildings and grounds, but we all know what that means, right? $5,000 in supplies, I mean,
That's mostly for what we buy for town hall and parting ways. Toilet paper, paper towels, any cleaning products, any, what
So
we have to
Jim,
fix.
salary's temporary, we were told that's a grass cutter, right?
Yes.
Because the kids are trying to do what they need to do.
That's correct.
So I think when we look at salaries temporary, Julie,
Yep,
just
salaries,
because it's a salary line item, we're talking about grass cutters, we add 2%, it's only 2%, it's peanuts, but I don't think every year we need to keep adding 2% because I think that we can arrange our grass cutting where, this year we do it 10 times, next year we do it 9 times. I mean, it's just one of those.
That's correct.
It's one of those budget line items that don't, just because it was a salary, we were prone to raise
Yes.
2%. I think
Well, the
we
first-
allocate $12,000 and Jim comes in and says, hey, 12 grand's not working because we got, more water this season and the grass is growing more, or we took on more responsibilities and we're cutting, I don't know, school department's grass and whatever. We got up the line item, that's what we would normally do in the past. We wouldn't just keep
Right.
adding 2% just because it was a salary line item for something
Yeah,
like
well, the
that.
first year we actually ran the program, we ran it literally only for the summertime. This year, the 2 students that we actually have on ended up working so well and so hard that one of them we actually kept on through October to take care of, leaves falling and all that kind of stuff, which would have been my 2 kids.
How
who have
are we
been-
doing that with the third? Because it seems the girl,
Yes.
she's a good worker, but she's been around, and is that coming out of this budget here, Jim?
It's coming out of this budget for a good part of it, and the rest of it has been coming out of the projects that we've been doing on. Like parting ways, there's a lot of money for parting ways, and that's where they've been concentrating some of their work.
Okay, so some of that salary that we're utilizing her more.
It comes from the
She's got-
projects
She was
that-
in carpentry or something? Was
Yes.
it Carpentry?
Yes.
So she's actually a pretty skilled worker.
Yeah, she does a lot of mechanical work as well, so.
She
yeah.
does. And we hired her, I think, as a grass cutter, right?
She was hired as a grass cutter,
Yeah. So,
Summer help, let's say summer help.
summer help.
summer help, yeah, whatever. That's what we should.
The CPA money associated with this budget?
no, so CPA would be in its own separate budget.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. But some of that money is being used for the Parting Way next year? I mean, is
Yeah.
that-
Well,
who decides that? I mean, we appropriated some.
Large amount. We got what?
I've put an application in for CPA money really to take a look at the Memorial Garden. The Memorial Garden's had no professional help for a long, long time.
Okay.
And that was the article that I put into CPA.
What is the Memorial Garden?
It's a part.
It's the big garden that's
With the
behind
garden?
where the gazebo is. I mean, all those plants have dedication plaques, every single one of them. The benches are all, so we've been able to take care of the benches. We rebuilt them all last year. But the trees, a lot of the trees, because of the way they've been maintained, are actually dying. They've been overmulched.
Crabapple trees, I think I seen something from you somewhere in here. Was it in here?
Yeah, well, there was a CPA article.
Crabs, you're talking about trunk, the guy comes in and he's not just a regular tree pruner, he does something with the trunks and stuff like that.
Right.
Take the-
Yeah.
So the good rooting system and then prunes the trees
Yeah, they
back.
actually kind of hydraulically punch air into the soil underneath them.
Yeah, okay, yeah, like aerating it,
Right.
yeah, I seen that.
All right, moving to the building department.
And Jim, I know we talked about the clerical position in your office, and so the budget that the selectmen have here is the additional hour, if you want to talk about that, for the clerical person.
I was gonna ask, why is it only 1%?
Well, because what we've looked at is that, I mean, when I first came into town hall, we had a full-time clerk in my position. The very first year we were here, we were asked to cut back 2%. I took a look at the time because in 2008, when I came in, the first budget I was responsible for, I could see the decline in building. And at the time, the clerk who we had fallen, broken her shoulder, and wasn't there, and there was another clerk who was filling in part-time. So when they began to look at hiring a new clerk, I went to the town, I went to Alan, and I said, listen, I says, I can do with a part-time clerk, not realizing at the time that I might never see that person back again. So we hired first Jody and then Bridget, but they were hired at 19 hours. I came back a few years later, and you guys were gracious enough to let me have her for 25 hours. And to be honest with you, my office is pretty busy. With all the responsibilities that I have, it's very busy. And if you look at, I basically have the same help that, other offices have, or less than other offices have. So as time goes on, I can see that the need to have one other person there. So we were thinking actually at some point in time that that position should go back to almost full-time. And I could creep it up by adding 1 hour each year. So it would be 10 years before we have, a full-time position back in my office. And in the meantime, it allows me the opportunity to take a look to see how the market's actually going. Probably it's like in 3 or 4 years, there's another projected decline in building. I may not need that at that time, so rather than just throw it all in at once, we can add 1 hour at a time and look at each year's budget to see how that's required.
That's a good idea. Like that idea. You're good with 1 more extra hour? So 26 hours, what this employee's gonna be doing, right?
I'm good with that, and I've spoken with her, and she's good with that.
Okay, very good.
I've asked, under building department, which is 15, I've asked, and I know you're dealing with the presentation you've had in the past, but we've got 2 line items that are both you. I've asked Ms. Hebert to merge them, and rather than split, I know your job is 2 things, but I've
Well,
asked those salaries to be
there's a
merged.
reason for doing that. We originally took a look at that because if I leave, it allows the selectmen to hire a building inspector to take my place. He's allowed to work by state law for 18 months before he gets his commissioner's license. That way, you're not responsible for paying him a commissioner's license which he doesn't have.
Could we call it something else? I just feel like we're...
You can call it whatever you want.
This is something else, so it's a little bit clearer.
That's
I mean,
pretty clear.
I can't commissioner stipend. The other thing too is,
It's
again, I'm
one
working
person,
on.
though. It's one
He's the
person.
commissioner. He's actually the town of Acushnet's only building commissioner we've ever had, is
If
that
I'm
correct?
a
Yes,
resident of the
that's
town of Acushnet, and I'm sitting at town meeting, and I'm looking at 2 line items that say 2 different things, I think we need residents to understand that this is the salary we're paying one person who has multiple responsibilities. Not
Yeah.
challenging
Well,
the number in any
you
way.
will
It's just-
find
it's
in
just
other
I'm looking for
budgets-
clarity in budgeting and honesty in budgeting, and
Yeah.
If I can, Roger,
Yep.
so this is one of the things that I'm looking to add this year, so that it will be clear for, Jim's not the only person, there are multiple
I know,
people who have
That's right.
splits. So I'm looking to do that so it will be more clear, but I can make a change on this and just write commissioner stipend, so at least people will, and that might be a little bit more clear if someone's looking at it, that, it's not necessarily a person on their own, it's a stipend for,
it's a conversation we've had in the past regarding even the
Well,
DPW commissioner whose
I'm
salary
fine
is to be
with whatever
split.
you
It is,
choose to
but
do.
we still do that. We said we were gonna put a footnote at the bottom of the budget
Yeah.
page and say,
Yeah.
where else is that person, if at all that person, has salary somewhere else, i.e. Joe Correa, he's got another $700 from the soil board, that should be
The
done.
director of
The
finance. should get a
treasurer's got
stipend.
$5,700 in the golf committee that we just reviewed. They take out $5,700, I think, for the treasurer's budget line, I'm pretty close, right?
53.
Okay, 53, I'm $400 off. Jim's was, we gave him initially $10,000 for becoming the commissioner, building commissioner. And the board said, at that time, this needs to be kept separate because he is the only building commissioner, certified building commissioner ever in the town of Acushnet. So i.e., as Jim said, we hire somebody else when Jim retires, 10 years out, 5 years out, whatever timeframe that is. That person, that building inspector, will not be looking at the budget and going, hey, I'm gonna get $100,000. No, it's that minus the 10 grand, and it shows the real salary of the building commissioner.
Can we
so
call it
people know.
building inspector commissioner stipend? Can we? I think
Will that fit?
we need to connect those. We need to connect those dots somehow.
Yeah.
I think I'm just trying to be. I just want people to look at this and understand that, it's
I
not
think that's
multiple
legit.
people, it's one person.
Like I say, there was
And-
that reason, Mr. Chairman, why we did it, and that was really, I was thinking for the benefit of the community, but
Yeah, and this
however
isn't
you want to
directly, this
title
is a
it.
conversation I had last year with other positions as well. I think
Yeah.
people need to understand what the salaries are in town and who we're paying and
Yeah.
splitting it amongst, and the conversation with Mr. Noble last year was, can we attach a spreadsheet that shows town salaries? Because if we're paying people out of 3 separate budgets,
Correct, right.
we want to, it's honesty in budgeting.
We did, we said we were gonna put that footnote, but we don't have it this year because Julie's mixed in.
So that's
bunch
the,
of
that's the only,
different
that's the
things.
only comment, that's the only comment.
Yep.
So, other questions on this budget?
Not at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Merritt.
Thank you, Mr. Merritt.
Thank you.
Do you want to keep Jim and
Oh, Jim, I'm sorry, you've got a reserve fund transfer, why don't we do that? And that is item 1 under request, under new business, so before you leave.
Oh,
And that's the
one
Parting
we
Ways
just-
Memorial Garden, you're looking
Correct.
at $3,900.
Yeah, and what we did was we actually then pulled the article from CPA. One of the reasons for doing that is because the way the budgeting works, if I have to wait for CPA to approve at town meeting, I've lost the season for the garden. I wanted them to be able to
So
get in
you
there.
want to do this, correct?
Yes, I do.
From the reserve, he's requesting a
Reserve
reserve fund transfer because you're supposed to prune in March, not in April,
That's the
not
whole
in
thing,
June,
yeah.
or...
I want them to come in sooner rather than
That's
later.
right, pruning usually occurs, if you talk to anybody who owns an apple orchard, they usually say you should be pruning in March,
They're
and
up,
be done
yeah.
by April.
And with the weather, it could be sooner.
Yeah.
You know,
Is there a motion to approve the reserve fund transfer for $3,900?
So moved.
$3,915.
$3,915.
You good with that, Jim? That
Yes,
amount?
yes.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And this goes to the finance committee also?
Yes.
Yep.
All right,
Thanks,
All set?
Jim. Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Merritt, thank you. Chief, you've been
Jim.
sitting patiently.
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome, Chief Richmond.
My budget hearing is not until next week. What I wanted to just take a few minutes of your time.
See you later.
I just want to take a few minutes of your time. Just as a quick aside, I've been progressing toward hiring the people we need to staff the department at the level it needs to be staffed at, as reflected in the FY20 budget of the year that we're in now. For a variety of reasons, we never achieved those staffing levels. We put 4 people in the full-time academy that were due to graduate on September 1st. We lost 1 during the academy due to an injury. Then we had the unexpected departure of a full-time officer to another community.
We met with 4 gentlemen here, are they all in the,
One of them withdrew,
yes?
one of them withdrew,
One was injured.
one is in the academy. No, we're going back to January, we're going back to July 1st of last year.
Oh, it's the old batch, okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the new batch.
Yeah, these are the full-time, we put 4 full-timers in 4 people in the full-time academy actually it started in April of '20. They graduated around September 1st, or 3 of them graduated, and 1 of them was out due to injury. So we're down 1 of the people that we anticipated having. In September, October-ish, we lost a seasoned full-timer to Taunton Police, lateral transfer. So we're down 2. As part of that budget, FY 2020 budget, we anticipated adding 2 additional civilian dispatches, so we could go close to civilian dispatches around the clock. Due to a variety of circumstances that occurred in the summer and the fall, negotiations weren't settled until November to allow us to be able to put them on the 4 and 2 schedule once we hired these additional 2 dispatches. Well, I've hired a 3rd one that's probably about 7 weeks into the training, probably another 2 or 3 weeks, depending on classes that one last class is put on by the state. What I'm looking to do, and I've been in conversation with a 4th dispatcher. My conversation, I'll start with this, is that 4th dispatcher is somebody that would come to us from another community that has the 5 certifications needed to be able to pretty much walk in the door and start working immediately. What I'm looking to do with that, and looking for your permission or the flexibility with this candidate, to be able to offer her a step commensurate with her years of experience, which in this case would be coming in at top step, salary-wise.
How many years of
This
experience?
is dispatch, right?
This is dispatch, yes. This
How
is
many years of
dispatch.
experience, Chief?
Right now, total 14 years.
Okay, all right, that feels like top step to me.
Yeah, 12 years in a similar sized community to us. doing pretty much the exact same job as we would be asking of her now. And the last 2 years at a regional center, at a high-volume regional center.
All right.
So that's what I'm looking to do, is to be able to offer her that
Yeah,
top
you
step.
can't bring somebody like that in at bottom step and
No,
they wouldn't have the training and the,
after, doing her background check is done, and after interviewing her and looking at her qualifications, after speaking to her, I was confident at 10 o'clock in the morning that if I needed her to walk in the door at 4 o'clock, that she could walk in and start working. I wouldn't do that to her. I'd give her a week or two transition, working with somebody just to kind of get how we tone out the ambulance, how we tone out the fire department, things of that nature, to get the lay of the land. But all the certifications, the 911 certifications, the emergency medical dispatch certifications, are all the protocols that we use. The records management software we use to record all our calls for service and do all the reports, she's been using it for 14 years. So it's just a matter of getting her a login. She's familiar with all the software, and she's familiar with the operations and familiar with the area. So, I mean, this is somebody that we would be able to eliminate, probably 10 weeks of training by bringing her in the door. Or at least be able to offer her.
Mr. DeRoche.
And you also mentioned that by doing this, we would save about $4,000?
At least for
Rather than going from a beginner or a new person?
Correct, because I anticipate, like, the training, we'd be paying probably about 10 weeks at that lower rate to train the person. So you're doubling up, you're not getting any use out of them. I shouldn't say you're not getting use out of them, you're not getting any solo use out of them to work the desk. They're basically right in second fiddle and attending classes. So that, you're looking at about 10 weeks, 10 weeks salary, plus the cost of the classes, books and fees. So you're probably looking somewhere in the vicinity of $9,000 to $10,000 during that period of time. Whereas the difference between top step and bottom step dispatch right now is about $5,000, $5,200 or so. So just, you're looking at being able to bring her in for $5,000 less.
Right.
The other thing that would do for us, that would lock in our fourth dispatcher, would allow me to put them on the 4-2 schedule that they negotiated, they agreed to go to in November. And what that does now is that gives us all but 2 shifts covered by civilian dispatches. So what I would do at that point, I would be able to free up a line of officers on the midnight to 8 shift, basically an officer at night that are working midnight, that are currently working the desk. I would slide them down to the 4 to 12 shift, which would then put 4 officers on the road, 4 to 12 on the schedule. So when the first person either called out sick or had training or was taking a holiday or something of that nature, I would not have to replace them. Thus, I would be saving on the overtime.
Are we, the overnight dispatch, are we still staffing that with an officer?
Yes, we are.
Still?
Yes.
Because the contract was settled so late and then we had to find people.
Correct.
And the goal is to move off that quickly. Mr. DeRoche, go ahead.
You just mentioned that we'll have all but 2 shifts
All but, yes.
covered by civilian dispatch.
Covered by the four civilian dispatches. We still have 1 part-time dispatcher that we could plug into those two seats, and we also currently have 2 part-time officers that we can schedule at straight time, and then we also have 2 that are going to be beginning their training imminently, have gone through their medical and psychological exams. They're going to be starting training. I imagine that those 2 officers probably would be available, and we're probably looking at probably a solid 2 or 3 months before they're available to work shifts.
So that should have some direct impact on the overtime budget.
Correct. It would impact FY20. This move would impact FY20 and certainly set us up for success in FY21. But, as you know, looking at numbers, the budget that was established for 2020 assumed that we'd have the staff in place, and it hasn't happened, but we're fairly close. And that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm cutting you off.
I was going to say, so that would be the dispatch side. Now, the other thing I'm looking at is where we lost 2 officers.
Stop at dispatches?
Yes.
Can I, so how many do we have now, full-time dispatches? Before we had 2.
Yep, right now we have 2 that are working, 1 that's in training, so a 3rd one, and we're looking at full-timers, and I'm looking to plug in the 4th.
So 4, how many do you need to cover all shifts on the 4-2 schedule?
4.5.
4.5.
4.5.
That 4-2 shift.
But we have part-time staff currently, that we can plug in there.
Right.
So there are two things we did in the last round of contracts to try to get the overtime costs are. We got that overnight dispatch out of the police union and to the other union. We've got the ability to shift, to staff that with a civilian rather than an officer working overtime, so that's important. The other thing we got with the addition of the part-time officers is the ability to fill shifts when they're open with part-time rather than, and I know the officer's unhappy about it, but, that was the plan to reduce overtime costs, was to fill those shifts with part-timers, rather than give the right of first refusal to a full-time police officer, so.
The unfortunate situation with the part-timers, I should say, is we've never, it's been years since we've had a stable, if you would, of part-timers. We have 2 part-time officers right now that are working. One of them is working 40 hours a week right now. And so he's as a part-timer. And the other one works 8, maybe 16 hours a week, but he has a full-time commitment. He's been here for a number of years, so his availability is...
Full-time, part-time.
Yeah, his availability is limited. So we currently only have those 2 part-time officers. We have 1 part-time
And we
dispatcher.
got the 4.
Yes, yeah, we got 3. We got 2 that'll be starting their training, relatively soon, and the
And
other
when
one,
can we put them in,
you're probably looking at a solid, depending on how classes line up, you're looking probably at a solid 3 months before we can start getting,
It's coming.
a solid 3 months.
Fiscal year.
Yeah.
This- We're behind because
Oh,
of
yes.
the way the challenges went with dispatches and ratification of the contract and da-da-da, with the plan that you put in place with the 4 on instead of the 3 on, and you don't fill the first one out, right?
Yes.
That's the plan you're talking about. So when we do this, so we've been poached before with our guys, right? We just lost one of our good guys, I think it was Craig Pimentel.
Yes.
Right? Officer Pimentel, good kid, and Taunton took him from us, and we've been like the poach in town, right? We send all our rookies, right, part-timers to the academy, and then...
Worse than part-timers, Mr. Gaskell, we're sending out full-timers that we pay to train.
Right, and then,
Yeah.
well, right,
Young
and
pop.
then in 3 years, well, that was my point, in 3 years, when they're full-timers, they become full-timers finally, they get poached and getting banged out. So what you're proposing right now is maybe we turn that page around a little bit and we do a little poaching ourselves.
The next portion of what the conversation I was gonna have in the document that I had sent over is talking about getting the approval to try to pursue a lateral transfer, poaching, if you will.
Right.
The department, we've made great strides in the last 5 years in regards to facilities and equipment and frankly, salaries. We are not at the top of the food chain as far as salaries go, but based on the nature of the community, the nature of the job, it's a somewhat attractive job, and it's all about recruiting and talking to people and trying to attract people to the department, and to someone in the department as a whole, not just looking at the dollar figure. Part of what I had talked about several months ago when I was before you, during interviews, was trying to make the job a little more appealing to people, where they're just not working there 4 and 2 on the road. There's opportunities once in a while, hey, you can follow up on this, or maybe you get involvement in that. Some of the things that I've started doing already is joining up with some other area departments to form like an outreach team. I'm going to be working with Chief Gallagher to work with his outreach team in regards to the opioid overdoses. I've sent a couple of officers to brief training, and they're going to be working, ultimately working with our fire department, doing follow-up visits to places, residents that overdose. It's part of a countywide initiative. Right now, what we're doing, what Chief Gallagher is doing, is he's doing follow-ups, or they're doing follow-ups with with people that they transport or they treat from Acushnet. Part of the countywide initiative to sign on to it is now there's a database that the officers have access to, where somebody, unfortunately overdoses, say in Dartmouth and New Bedford or Norton or something like that, and they live in Acushnet, we get notification where we would be able to do a follow-up, with the fire department, with outreach coach, recovery coach, that type of thing.
Like a council type.
Correct, just to do a follow-up. And the police are there going kind of low-key, kind of a different kind of approach. We're not going there in uniform with a mock cruiser, but, just going to be a presence and to show, hey, this is the other side, that there's other opportunities out there, that, we are here to help. We're not strictly here to, lock you out because of this or that. Try to point them in the right direction, try to solve the problem. So that's one of the small things that I've started to implement, and we're not operational yet, but that's somewhat attractive. It's something different, and I know as a young officer when I started out that to have the opportunity to do something different, was very rewarding, and helps build them and kind of mold them as for future promotions or future positions within the department. But back to the poaching is. I see a smile there. That's really the best way to put it.
You've got somebody in mind.
I do, but there's a lot of moving parts with a civil service lateral transfer. First would be obviously the blessing to pursue it. Then very similar to what we were just talking about is bringing somebody in at that top step, or at a step commensurate with their years of experience, but also the civil service lateral transfers, and I'm not 100% on this, I'll be honest with you, is that you also come along with vacation time. Every officer that we've lost in the time that I've been here has left here and gone to the step at the civil service department at their salary step. If they had 5 years on, they get the 5-year step, they'd also get the 5 years of vacation time. Where they would start over is things like longevity, sick time, seniority for purposes of, vacation selections and shift bidding. They go to the bottom of the list like they're new to the department, but there's flexibility within that civil service lateral process to bring them in at a step pay rate and vacation accumulation to make them, I guess, whole, or to attract them to come over.
Sure, well, it's different, because this is something that we haven't seen before, but we're gonna...
We've been on the bad side,
Right, I'm sure, we haven't done it.
Yes.
So we don't know what it's like, but we know what it's like. We know what we're doing when we do this, but it's... So if you say to the board, it's something that we haven't done, the board hasn't done since I've been here in 10 years. We haven't hired somebody in the lateral like this.
Correct. We never have, to my knowledge.
So if you have an individual in mind, I think the board looks at it and says, well, that's great, but does this individual already got 27 years where he's only good to us for 3 more years? That's kind of where you would look and say, are there pension costs related to that? Well, those are factors that the board would have to factor in and saying, so it sounds good up front, but what are the back end costs to this individual? So, there's that years of service gap that you would want to be looking at and saying, this is the ideal candidate if I was doing a lateral transfer, because I'm going to get, say, 7 to 10 years. I'm going to get somebody with experience, like let's use a dispatcher, 12 years. Pretty good move, right? They got plenty more time left in the system for us, right? We're not going to be paying pensions in 5 more years for them, and how that would work anyway, because they changed the laws, right? All that is cumulative, so the board would have to look at that, but are we hiring somebody with 25 years of service, and are they only going to be good for 5 years? What's the cost benefit? You broke that down to us on what it is for the training purposes, but we didn't look at the back end of that curve to see what that expense is really going to be. You know what I mean? So that's something I would ask you, if we had somebody in mind, where is that person going to come in? Plus, the longer if they got 25 years, they're probably going to have 4 or 5 weeks vacation. That's going to cost. So there's our expenses on the back end of the curve.
They're absolutely,
You showed us the front end of the curve, but we didn't get the back end of it.
Well, I didn't figure out a dollar figure, but I did figure in, I did mention the vacation time.
Yeah. So
It's hard to determine the cost of the vacation time, and we can determine the cost that we're gonna pay the person. But the replacement cost is usually where things hit us, because traditionally, we've always operated at that minimum, so every time somebody is out, we're replacing somebody at overtime. It just about. So as part of that jump to the 4 on those 2 shifts, on the 8 to 4, 4 to 12, there would be some savings there.
Yeah.
But I would
Is that what shift, you were saying about that, but doesn't it all come down to a certain time of the year they do shift bidding?
Yeah, we do. The bids go out in, we start bidding in March, the month of March, and then they're awarded in March, and then April 1st, we bid, the month of April, they bid vacations for the start of the fiscal year. As far as the additional people that we're talking, trying to go to this 4, I would hold those bids back right now until we have the personnel, and I would make those bids contingent on having the personnel. For instance, when Sunday is March 1st, I wouldn't put out a bid that reflects 4 people on the road, 8 to 4, 4 people are on the road, 4 to 12, if we don't have the personnel.
Right.
I'm not gonna do that, because that's just bite off my nose to spite my face. I would make, go ahead.
I
No,
was
go
going to
ahead.
say, conceptually, I'm fine with the plan. I hear what Mr. Gasper's saying. Would you bring candidates to us and say, this is what I want to do? Or are you just looking for free reign?
Well, free reign, that's a good word. Flexibility?
Flexibility.
I really am, so I'm looking for the right
You did a nice analysis here, but I hear what Mr. Gasper's saying as well, but I don't think you're looking to bring somebody in I think the concern is somebody comes in at the end of their career and we inherit a lot of their pension liability. Is that
That's
the
similar,
concern?
yeah, it's the back end cost, so I just want to, look, I've talked to you about this before, I think it's a great idea, I think we ought to start doing what other people have done to us, right? We've talked about this, and I said, go forward if we can do this, but you need that permission from the board. I just don't want to be getting people that are, aging out in their career, and they're only gonna be serving us a few years, and I'm dealing with that, and Julie will help us understand what those pension liabilities and all that would
And I'll be honest with you, I don't know, I would guess that it might be prorated based on where they're coming from. I don't know that we would assume,
They'll
but
come with
I don't
with
know
an account,
that we're,
so-
that we're gonna assume full
The
responsibility.
nice thing about the pension thing, though, is they're only been here for 5 years, so we're only liable for a short period of that, right?
My understanding, so they used to do a proration, and then I think trying to prorate time and paybacks between different towns for multiple employees got too messy, where it all tends to net up in the end, because we might inherit somebody, but then somebody else, like we might lose somebody at the same time. So my understanding is that they don't do any kind of proration anymore. It's whoever you have you're on for when they retire.
Oh,
When the
wow.
music stops, whoever's in the seat.
Wow.
Because it goes both ways.
Yeah, well, it doesn't go both ways, I can tell you.
Well, in essence, and the
So
calculation
there's the one,
was-
there's the answer we're looking at, that's the problem, is if.
Is that, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, is that, because I don't know, is that,
I
is
wanna-
that the
I'll
definitive
We have
check
to
it.
find
No,
out with Bristol
I
County
wanna check
retirement,
it.
right?
Yeah, I want to check it, but I know that the old rule was more of a proration, and my understanding, again, without being 100% certain, my understanding was that calculation, because imagine that calculation is massive, and then how do you back charge a town for this person for this many months, and that person for that many months, and it became a very convoluted, as people kind of shifted a lot between different
I thought it was
municipalities.
the opposite, do the proration now, and before they didn't, you just inherited that person's pension liability. So if
They
you,
could have started at that, and then.
I think it's, I don't know which way it is, we'll have to discover that, chief, but I'll
Okay.
tell you right now, if it's the old school way, where I'm taking a 20-year, 5-year veteran, as much as I'd like to have a 25-year veteran, I don't want to pay his pension for the next umpteen, 30 years,
At the
40
full, at the
years.
full boat, if it ends up being
That's
something that's still
disastrous.
prorated, if it's something that's prorated, is that
Yeah.
something that you?
That would be
the
a
board-
disaster for our community, our taxpayers, everybody, so let's.
But just,
let's figure it out.
I mean, could we have the understanding that, you'll look for somebody you can get, we'll build a career with the town of Acushnet. You'll look for a officer that's maybe in the first half of their career that, not necessarily somebody up brand new, somebody in the middle of their career that could give us 10, 15, 20 years of service.
I want to keep the options open, and just as an aside, I don't advocate this as being like the solution to hiring, because I want to give something for the part-time officers that are there to be able to, aspire to, so I'm not just going to say, hey, let's go out and get a lateral all the time, so the part-timers just stay part-time. Because we have, one part-timer of the two we have, one is interested in full-time, and of the three that are in training, or I'm sure all of the three would be interested. The problem is getting the seat in the academy and the length of the academy, so even if I hired, right now I hired, the one part-timer we have to fill one of these positions, I'm really not going to see any savings or any effectiveness from him for a year, because the soonest academy that has seats is August or September. So you're looking at 5 months beyond that, so you're probably looking at March of 2021.
I like this plan that you have, Mr. Cabral alluded to. You've laid it out very nicely for everybody to understand, and I get it, but I'm just looking at the back end of it, and I don't want, those are what I call the hidden costs, right, is the pensions, and that's the big doozy in the room, right? We don't need to be taking more of that on, that's for sure. We got a big enough pension liability, so,
And what about our OPEB liability?
and our OPEB liability,
Yep.
right?
So let me just so I'm clear, if we are on the hook for everything, then your interest would be in finding somebody that's more middle of the pack, that's gonna have more of a longer
Here's what I'm afraid
career.
of, and we're not gonna discriminate
Yeah,
against
I know
candidates
exactly where
based
you're
on
going.
their age.
Yes.
So we're gonna comply with all appropriate employment laws, but I think as a community, I think I need to say that.
Yes.
But as a community, we need to, because we haven't said.
Well, you're looking at it from a
We
strictly
need
financial
to
standpoint.
look at the big picture, and we're looking for an employee that's going to give us a lot of years of service, I think would be the goal. And looking for somebody that we can make an Acushnet police officer that's gonna be ingrained in the Acushnet community and become a part of a community over many years of service, and that would be the ideal candidate. And we'll weigh the short and long-term costs of bringing that person into the town.
Okay, so
It's clear?
Yeah, no, just.
No, it's not- that's not clear. I know,
Yeah.
that's fine.
No, just, I guess, I guess, just so I have it straight, what we're looking at is if we are on the hook 100% for the pension, we are looking for somebody that would have a longer career here with the town of Acushnet. Is that in a nutshell?
Yeah, ideally, yeah.
Yeah,
ideally.
okay.
But, I mean, whoever solves our problem, we need police officers. Whoever solves our problem, whoever fills that need, we should evaluate fairly.
Okay.
I guess would.
And it wouldn't be just, I can tell you, it would be a background check, it would be the same medical and drug screening and psych exam that the other people go through, so it's not like, and then there's the other issue of compounds is you know, as you've signed off on officers that have left, the officer that, whoever the officer ends up being, if we're so lucky to get somebody to come here, they're gonna have to be released by their department, by their appointing authority, which some departments don't do that.
Could I suggest that, what you should probably do is, when you identify a candidate, find somebody and, bring that candidate in, and maybe so we can understand what it is, if you don't want to do it in, maybe to the chairman of the board, whoever that is at the time, and Ms. Hebert, and just have a conversation about, who we're considering.
Okay.
I think would probably be best practice.
Okay, that sounds good. Yes, sir.
Would you like to move forward with the, I'm in favor of doing this, but, one at a time, right? Not just giving you the clear reins to just do this whenever you want.
No, this is a unique circumstance right
We're
here.
the appointing authority, so, as far as the dispatcher goes, you talked about this individual, 12 years
Yes.
experience. I'd be fine with making the motion for you to go
Yeah, agreed.
Right.
Yeah, motion
I
second.
second that motion.
All right, further discussion?
for the dispatcher.
Can I just
chief.
clarify? This is a union position, so you guys can vote tonight to allow him to
Fill the position.
fill the position, but we would still have to do an MOU with the union just to clarify that the person would come in at whatever step, but like you said, the seniority would still be based on the date of hire because it's a union position, so.
Yeah, within our shop, yes, correct, because they're gonna bid, the dispatchers are also gonna bid yearly, based on seniority, and that's already, that's already been pretty well established, amongst the three that are there and the other
So
candidate.
if you guys are okay with it, we'll work on a quick MOU just to state that if the person accepts it.
So the seniority, just because the new one, so let's pretend that this has happened in the 12 years. I just did this with the fire chief, actually, for the pay grade anyway, right? Seniority is, you're still the low one on the totem pole, even though you have 12 years' experience. The current ones are the senior,
Correct.
right?
Yes, 'cause
So
they-
they're gonna come in, because you got the 12 years' experience, your pay scale will be put at the step of that pay scale. Your vacation will do the same, but as far as your seniority, you're down here, you start at the bottom.
Correct.
To pick the last shift and the last vacation week.
Correct.
Yeah, just to make that clear.
Is there, aye?
Aye.
All in favor? Yes,
Aye.
aye. And on the police officers, I think you get
Yeah,
the
let's-
consensus of the board that we
Okay.
love the plan, and
figure it out.
bring us candidates.
Okay.
I would say is where we want to go.
Okay, and that would be something, like I said, would that be a discussion with Ms. Hebert and member of the board, like outside of a meeting? The
Do
only
we
reason-
do that as a, I mean, do you want to float it?
And you do want, I'm not saying I'm not gonna march 10 people in here, but, a couple or one or two or something like that, just to get a feel.
We need the answer to the question is, what is the pension
Yes.
liability, right?
Before we
Because
even-
you're not only assuming pension liability, your pension, as Mr. DeRoche has caught on to, you're paying for the OPEB liability, which is health benefits for the rest of this person's life. And police officers, they can retire out of what, age 55?
Yes.
30
Depending on,
years?
depending on the year.
30 years of service?
32, usually 32,
32
55
years of
is the magic
service, so
number.
I mean, come on, let's be realistic. These guys are coming out, if the guy's 50 years old, he can retire, if he's got his 32 years, he can retire at 55, and we might be paying for him longer in retirement than what we had him working for us. That's the problem that I
Yeah. Oh, I
have.
understand.
That's what everybody needs to understand.
But, I mean, the pension plans are better than they were, so they're funding it over their career more than they ever did in the past as well, so there's
So
some.
not if it's the way she said.
I just shot out an email, so I'll get an
I'm
answer.
just
to you
concerned
guys.
about that, you know?
Okay, so.
Okay, so I'll be in
Clear as
touch
mud?
with Ms. Hebert, and I thank you for your time, and I'll see you next Tuesday.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Old business, first items, Christopher Clark came in and met with us 2 weeks ago, offered his services as a support role for Ms. Hebert. I don't know if I would call what he did an interview with us, but he's available, certainly very, very qualified in a support role. was recommended highly by Mr. Pecos as someone in that role. I know that's, we had talked about, and I think we need to define what we want that role to be, but he has given us a draft agreement, which honestly I've not spent a lot of time with, just because I want to figure out how we want to go forward, but has proposed an hourly rate. And we can, we can figure out how many hours a week we want to use him, we can figure out, where he's going to sit, we can figure out, we talked about potentially project support, being available, I gotta figure out what that word is, like the safety net, where you pick up the phone and call somebody, whatever the role is as a support role. So I guess just trying to find out how you two want to go forward potentially with that position, if you want to go forward with that position.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could, I've talked to Ms. Hebert. I mean, we've signed up a contract, we voted the contract tonight with Ms. Hebert, and the board was pretty confident she could do the job. So, I've done a little research on, unfortunately, that's the downside of looking at these people. You gotta look at people, and I wasn't overly excited as Mr. Pecos put this candidate in front of us. Based on things I've read online, I'm not overly excited. I'm not trying to discredit the individual. I just know of some issues. In past
Well,
places.
let's.
I'm not, so I'm just
Let's
saying,
not.
I just think that it's, Ms.
So we're not looking for
Hebert-
we're not looking to put somebody in that role, is what you're saying?
She's willing to take the job. I think what's troubling to Mrs. Hebert is she's trying to balance two jobs. And I think that if we get the town accountant, a town accountant in that position and
The ad's been filed. Yeah, we've got an ad.
and relieve Ms. Hebert of those responsibilities, and she's able to focus solely on the town administrator's job, I think Ms. Hebert, after speaking to her for several hours on several different occasions about this, I think she's gonna be fine. And she's told me that she's got that outreach source. She's got people she could reach out to. There's town administrator meetings once a month or once a quarter or whatever. Lisa will be able to tell you. Al used to go to them all the time, where you develop this network of people that you trust.
Right.
People like me talking to you or me talking to Dave. If we get in the room and we say, hey, that guy's pretty, so you kind of, that girl's pretty intelligent, and you kind of make that network. And she knows, she's already done it with a few different times that she's given me examples for. So I don't know. I say we're paying her a salary. Do we, I mean, she's assured me that she could pick up the phone, and I don't think there's very much that Ms.
I mean,
Hebert's
this
got
is,
come across.
this is something you wanted, so.
I know, and that's why I'm
Okay.
telling you now. I'm just,
Okay, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm
I've
just
gone through a
trying to-
lot of discussion with Ms. Hebert. Ms. Hebert, right or wrong, we've had some pretty long dialogue on this conversation. I was ultimately the guy that was concerned about this, but you know what? She wants that responsibility, she wants to take it on. I'm endorsing her.
Okay.
I'm the guy that's, I'm gonna be chairman, I think, in 3 months or whatever time frame it's gonna be when your election, whatever it is, Raj, and, I'm good with it. I'm gonna do what I have to do to support her, and I'm confident that she can do it, and she can pick up the phone and call certain people, and I think that, she brought up a valid point. Kev, if I have that much of a problem with some major thing, which I don't foresee coming in the town of Acushnet, she just picks up the phone and calls town council. That's what town council's for. So I'm like,
I'm fine.
yeah.
Mr. DeRoche, you good?
No additional comment. I'm
Okay,
fine
then
with,
then we're agreeing we don't need to bring in part-time support?
Very good.
Right, we're all on board, that's fine, I don't think any votes are necessary.
Can you just reach out to
I will reach out to Mr. Clark
and say
and tell
thank
him.
you very
Absolutely.
much for
Yeah,
offering your
absolutely.
consulting services,
Absolutely,
but
I will do,
the
make
board
sure that
has
happens
opted
tomorrow,
not to
maybe
go that route.
maybe tonight. Updated town administrative contract approval, we
Did it.
brought this contract into the last meeting, we voted it, but after we voted it, there were a couple of items in the contract that were noted that we thought we should change. Ms. Hebert agreed we should change some minor adjustments, and where are the contracts, by the way?
She's got.
All right, I want to sign those before we leave this table, at least one original.
I've signed one original.
All right, I want one fully signed original before I leave this table. I'm not
I
going
didn't do
anywhere.
that to you this time, and I didn't do it
Not
with Ms.
going
Hebert. so-
anywhere till we sign.
What did they do with that?
I have no idea.
Oh, man, it's gone.
Oh, boy.
See, somehow-
We could be
Hey,
here.
I have 10 copies
We
over
could be,
here.
we could be here all
I
night.
have them right here.
Okay,
I'd like I want
All
one fully
right.
signed original before
That's
we,
just a joke.
we need to sign 3 originals, but I want one fully signed original.
One
before we-
full, mine's already.
I'm gonna sit here and hold my breath
Okay.
until that's done.
We'll put this contains the 2 changes that.
Yes, yeah, and
Discussed
a red line,
previous.
a red line version was circulated to everyone with the
Section
changes.
3, number B, and
There's a lot of pages
We
to
removed
sign.
the other one with the chapter 40.
Yeah, we just got just one original,
That was redundant, and we made it the.
which Mrs. Leonard is gonna take and lock in a safe.
Right, okay.
And then the last
And,
the
What
last
did
page.
you send? These extra.
Those are just.
This is, yeah, this is.
There's there was only two there, so if you wanted to
No, there's
sign.
three, there was three.
Yeah,
There
might
was?
be the one
Oh,
before
there's two
that.
there. Oh, all right, yeah.
The town, it says the town shall not at any time, this one right here, but it says, then it says in accordance with the provisions of section 4, paragraph C, which is town meeting approval.
Okay. Very good. You put my initials on each page. and-
Why are you biting your lip over there, Miss Healy? We just put you on the hook by yourself?
Ah, it's
That
only
was the
been-
reserve fund transfer.
It's only
You
been
signed your
since
governing approval.
September 1st.
All right.
Yeah. 7 or 8 years later.
Do I need separate pens for each letter?
That's only if you
We,
answer.
yeah, we give them, yeah, sure.
We already did those.
Yep.
Okay, that's all. Jim's pretty up trees. What else is
I'll have to
not?
take
Can we, please? Oh, that's the better, then we have to do that for two.
Yeah. No one in the field, that's what I do, usually with my meeting stuff, and then I bring
One original?
copies.
One original. Sign.
You need to sign this too, Ms. Hebert, I'm not leaving until you do.
Oh, somebody missed a thing.
No, that's her.
Miss Hebert.
That's her.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Look.
This is a-
Yeah,
there.
all right, date, today's, I mean, this is, we backdated this to be effective to February 1st.
Okay.
Initial and date, and that's one, we're gonna do 3 originals.
I only have a red pen, can I?
You want to, oh, okay. That's yours.
Should have music playing in the background for everybody.
It's all right, the entertainment factor, this meeting's been high enough to date, so.
Put it in order.
So on the last page, probably not necessary, whatever.
I know, right?
Yeah, it's that late.
All right.
You are our town administrator, pen back. Go lock that up somewhere.
Yes, congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Where are the other ones?
We'll get
You have them
those
all.
before,
I gotta sign
yeah, we're gonna do 3 originals.
All right.
I want to make sure we have 1 original.
Okay.
You're all set.
We'll get 3 before. Okay, indirect cost discussion I brought back because we never really resolved it last time, so I wanna vote yay or nay as to whether or not we're going to assign any indirect costs to our enterprise funds this year. I don't-
Nay.
You're not in favor of doing that?
Yeah, nay.
You don't want to do it?
No.
There you go.
I listened to our discussion from 2 months ago.
Oh, we've discussed this, we discussed this
2 months
repeatedly.
ago, 6 months ago, a year
About 6
ago.
weeks ago, and a year ago, and everything, and points were made, and I've decided that I don't want to institute them this year. To the golf committee, the water and sewer committee, I think those are the only two.
Golf, water, and
And
sewer,
DPW.
and, yeah, golf, water, and sewer would be the 3. Absolutely. Okay,
You know,
okay. I'll, understand, I will make the point, because I need to, that we are, in my opinion, burdening people that aren't getting the benefit of the golf course, water or sewer,
that is correct.
with expenses that they shouldn't be paying.
And
So
I-
that,
and I'm
that
pretty
is the,
much one
that
of
is the
those-
counter argument.
Pretty much one of those people.
There's other
Yeah,
burdens
and I am.
that all of us hold for other people in the community that are using services that aren't set up as enterprise
Yeah.
funds, that could be set up as enterprise funds, so, and that cost is much greater than the small
Yeah.
amount that you recapture,
School,
so.
school department,
It is-
I've never had a fire yet, I pay for the fire department, the police department, all of
There's
those
a
are.
lot of different things
all
that
of
we can
those are-
start shredding the very fabric of our community.
But those are more typical, Mr.
Right.
Gaspar, those are more typical.
Until
It's
you
more-
engage.
It's more typical to have a school and a police department and a fire department than it is to have water, sewer. I don't have water or sewer, and I don't golf.
You don't have water in your house in Bow Drive?
I have a well. I
Yeah.
take my water out of my backyard, I pump it into my front yard when I'm done
Really?
with it.
I didn't know you guys didn't.
I'm willing to,
The whole neighborhood's water?
We're all water and septic. And we're water.
I still got a
So,
pump.
so what, me too. Yep. So what happens is taxpayers like me and taxpayers like me, and I'm not singling out, are paying for the costs associated with our water operations, our sewer operations, and our golf operations, and yet getting no benefit for any of those things. And those are not, I'm gonna say, not traditional municipal expenses, like a school department, like a fire department, like a police department. I'm not gonna beat this to death, but it's a point,
I
it's a
understand.
point that needs to be made.
Your point
And
is valid.
I respect your opinions,
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, that we should share in those costs, and I don't, my comment is I absolutely support the golf course we're in, we need to support it, it needs to work. Not trying to undermine that in any way, but I feel that we should be assigning costs to the operation to truly measure the financial viability of that. And it should be, if it's not generating revenue to support those costs, then it needs to find a way to generate more revenue and truly be self-supporting.
In about 6 years, when the golf course has
Yep.
paid off their debt,
It'll generate revenue for the
I'm
whole
going to
town.
say that my opinion is going to change as far as the golf course goes. I truly,
Yeah,
if I'm
could I-
even here. Let me even preface that.
Could I get a motion that we will, this year, not assign any indirect costs to any of our enterprise fund budgets?
So moved.
No, second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'd be opposed. All right,
You're opposed.
I am opposed.
Okay.
Under new business, we've got a memo from the assessor's office regarding Phase 2 betterment abatements. And this is one from, we've discussed this, I think, a couple of years in a row. Ms. Hebert, can you walk us through this and help us
Yeah.
understand? I know I've got this memo on my
I'm
phone.
pulling it up too, I know. This is the Fernandes property. And so this is it's a property that was assessed to betterment when we tied everyone into sewer in that area, and turns out there was no connection put into the property, so.
Is it a buildable lot?
No.
No.
It was in 2007, let's put it that way.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
so
Change.
somewhere along the line, there was some kind of error that happened where it was thought that the connection came over, and the property was assessed to betterment. The lot
Why, we
was.
can't just fix this and...
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
We're working on it, honestly, it's been passed along for a while. The only way right now that we have to fix the betterment for like the current years and moving forward until the betterment is completed is to have the Board of Selectmen vote to abate the
Okay.
betterment. But we do have an issue that we need
And
to
we're
clear
doing
up
it
in the
we're
past.
doing it 1 year at a time.
Yeah, you have to do it as it's assessed.
We've probably about 5 more years left to do it.
Yeah,
Based
but
on
we
the
do have an
amount
issue with the back,
Okay.
all of the previous charges that we need to clear up.
Could I get a motion to abate the betterment for fiscal year 2020? Is that what we're doing?
Yep.
There's 2 of them here, Mr. Chairman. It's 2 different,
What's the total of the abatement?
well,
It's the
I
same
don't know,
property,
it's a
right?
little bit confusing because it says $971.15, Julie, $971.15, parcel 24.166, is that correct?
That's what I have here, yes.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to abate the sewer betterment for parcel 24.166 under Fernandes, $971.15.
I'll second that motion,
I think there are 2 parcels, though, you're right.
but
And then we have this one was, and then I'll make a motion to abate parcel 24.177.179 Fernandes, Allen Street, in the amount of $971.15. I believe those are the 2 we need to do.
Second, Mr. DeRoche?
I'll second.
All right, we've got 2 motions on the floor, which is fine, we'll vote them both. All in favor of the 2 motions? Yeah, that's fine, that's on me, yeah. It's on me, no, it's me, I assume full responsibility
I
for
want to make sure for the
that
record
Robert's
it's
Rule of Order
clarified.
violation, my fault. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right, we're good. All right, we've got an MOU regarding a fire department employee. Ms. Hebert, why don't you take us through it? And I know we've discussed this, why don't you just,
Yep.
for purposes of the audience,
Sure.
studio audience. and
Quick
folks at home.
version. So the newest full-time employee in the fire department was previously an employee of the school department. And so when what this MOU is looking to do is do a conversion of his sick time. We're one town, but at the same time, when he ended his employment with the school, his vacation was bought out, which is part of the employment regulations.
But it's the sick time we're trying to figure out.
Sick time, technically, the town doesn't have to give him his sick time, but as a general rule of good practice, he's still an employee of the town. So in discussions with the fire, all of the union employees were okay with him carrying forward the sick time that he had already accrued under the school. And we're putting the MOU together with the provision that the sick time that he's carrying forward cannot be paid out by the town.
Which is in line with what we do on the fire department
So-
side. We're
so
just gonna
what-
get those days to
Yes.
comply
So
with what we.
the sick hours that he accrued under the school had no buyback provision ever. But under the fire, because they have the fire union contract, they do have a sick buyout provision. And so this MOU basically clarifies that.
Above 1,200 hours.
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, if he can carry forward the time and use it as needed, because he did work as a town employee to accrue it, but he can't get a buyout from it.
The discussion we had earlier, the MOU, I think, needs to be tweaked a little bit to be a little clearer, but the discussion we had earlier was, we don't want to have these two buckets of sick days forever. So the discussion was that future sick days would accrue in the fire department bucket, and days that are taken would come out of the school department bucket. So we'd make those days go away and just have and that may take, if the employee's never sick, those could be there forever. But
Right.
we don't want to run two buckets, so we'll relieve that bucket. And I think we need to be a little clearer in the MOU as to what's happening. But conceptually, I'm fine with it. I think we just need to tweak the MOU a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, so we're not signing tonight.
Yeah, not signing, I think we gotta clarify that just a little bit. But can we approve conceptually that you get it?
I understand.
Yeah, I understand it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right,
Mr. Chairman, we
motion.
don't want two buckets of sick time and trying to do this and getting involved in doing this and making practice out of doing this, but for now,
Is there a motion to approve the MOU?
conceptually.
Conceptually, yes?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
is that set up for us all to sign, or just for me? We can circulate it before it's,
Yeah.
we'll circulate it before it's signed.
Okay.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. DPW no report, town administrator?
I just had two things that I wanted to mention. They're both DPW related. One is, we just got an email today from Waste Management, and, yeah, so I have this one is about the recycling audit that's gonna
Oh,
be
yes,
taking
yes, yes,
place.
yep.
And so, essentially, the recycling processing facility will be performing a composition audit of the town's inbound curbside recycling loads between March 2nd and March 13th to determine the town's residue, which is contamination rate. I know from previous meetings with the DPW, we understand that when our recycling is examined, the contamination rate, the contamination, amount of contamination in the loads determines how much we pay for it. So,
Can I give an example, just?
yeah,
So for example, the Cabrals, when they put their, well, it wasn't me, it was my wife, when we were putting our recycling out in our recycling bin, we were putting it out in the plastic trash bag, and that plastic trash bag's a problem.
yes.
So now what we do is we take the plastic bag out and dump everything out of the plastic bag into the recycling bin and reuse that plastic bag for household trash, which can go into the trash barrel. In the trash barrel, the plastic bag's fine. In the recycling bin, it's not. And any other
Yeah.
unrecyclable materials in the recycling bin would be a problem. But
So-
that trash bag's an
Correct.
example that would cause the load to be rejected.
Single-use plastic bags need to go in the trash.
In the trash.
In the trash.
So, where this is coming up between March 2nd and March 13th, we just wanted to let the townspeople know, be extra vigilant with your recycling, and especially in those weeks. I mean, ideally every time, but where we're being audited, it makes a big difference for the amount that we pay for recycling. So if you can, watch what you're putting in there while that audit is taking place, that would be helpful. And then this.
So
Yep.
that audit will have a direct impact on the new contract going to be coming up? They'll say, well,
I think
It'll have an impact on our rate. So
Okay.
our contract will say, if you have this type of contamination level, you'll pay X amount.
Right.
So they're basically looking to see if our contamination rate needs to be adjusted.
Okay.
So right now, we're paying $110 a ton for a clean load, and if it's a contaminated load, we pay $150 a ton
That's
for a
right.
contaminated load. And what we were paying 2 years back at $30 a ton for all our recycling. So that's how much recycling's gone up.
Yep.
And it's I'll be honest, sometimes I go to recycling bin, you drive yourself an insane man crazy already, figuring out, does this go in, does this not go in?
Yeah.
It's a glass job, but you gotta take the metal cap off it, and so it can't be, I'm like, really? You want me to do all of
I'm
this?
gonna tell my wife.
It's
I
crazy,
think that
that's
issue.
the crap they're looking
Yeah.
at. It's like, if you've got a pickle jar that's got a metal cap, you're supposed to take the metal cap off, throw that in, and throw your glass jar so it's all clean. I'm like, what?
But if you have a plastic
Yeah, it's
milk
stupid.
jug, you keep the cap on
Yes.
and throw it all together, because the
It's-
little
it's-
plastic cap from the milk jug will jam the machine if you take it off.
All right, another lesson
So
learned,
if it's
kids.
on the milk
It's
bottle,
crazy.
And it'll
it'll
go in the
through.
trash.
Another lesson learned.
So try your best with
Please.
recycling that way.
Yeah.
And then the other item that I have, the DPW worked on a project with a grant from Mass DEP to get a swap shop shed. And so they posted on the website, but I'll just read it. The swap shop, funded in part by a grant from Mass DEP. Grand opening will open on Friday, February 21st, which was last week, so it's open now. Please come and leave or take gently used electronics, furniture without cushions, children's play items, bikes, anything that is still usable by another resident.
Nice.
We cannot take TVs, computers, or mattresses for the swap shed. This is an exciting opportunity to recycle used items in good condition that can bring joy to another Acushnet resident. So please stop by and drop off or pick up something from a new swap shop. So this is, again, looking
That's a
to,
nice, that's what happens at bulky item pickup. It's sort of a
Yeah,
version
you
of a
just
swap.
want-
It's a
It's
version of
just
a
somebody
swap
driving
shop.
around looking for it.
I know, it's a version of a swap shop.
And I have
That's a
to
good,
give-
what a great idea.
The DPW credit for taking the 14 grand that they got and building quite a
How big is this, how
quite a
big is the
large
structure?
structure, big enough to put a truck in. Like a
40, 30 by 40
Yeah, 30 by 40.
What a great idea.
And they
what a great
built it,
idea,
and
what
we,
a great idea.
when they built it off the salt shed, so it points
Yeah.
down, so if we ever want to keep expanding to it, we have that liberty to keep
Yeah.
going with it.
That's
The
correct.
building itself.
Yeah.
So it's nice, and Dan did it with the crew, built it itself. I was there quite a few days. I was disappointed I wasn't there when they poured the concrete floor, but it's got an actual concrete floor,
Yeah.
nice little office. We're gonna get rid of the little shed so that the recycling guy's not in there freezing his butt off and, heat and everything else. But Dan did a phenomenal job, and I wasn't gonna speak on it, but I really need to commend Kathy Silva, because she took the initiative to go out and find this grant, and that's basically how we move forward with building it. So congratulations, and thank you very much,
Yeah.
Kathy Silva, for doing that. And Dan and your crew, again, I've been out there, they were up on the beam thing, and it was amazing to watch them build it, and they did it in the middle of the winter. I was shocked,
Yeah.
but they did it, and that's
Yeah.
what they do, and they're good at what they do, and I commend their efforts. And they did open it up last Friday, wasn't announced to the board, but they did, and they have a few things in there. I stopped in and checked out some things from, I think it was Friday morning or whatever, when Recycle was open, and it's really cool, because there are a lot of unfortunate families in the town of Acushnet and elsewhere where maybe some kid and they can't. I brought a mountain bike there, because Peter Fortin told me, I know somebody who's looking for a mountain bike. It's the father of a girl from across the street. The father won't buy her a bike. I went home, I haven't used the bike in years. I took the bike and I brought it down and said, please give this to the gentleman that's looking for a bike for his neighbor. So I was in there, people were taking, there was a couple of bikes, they were taking them. They need some work, but you know what, for sharp money, people can fix them up instead of going out and buying a $200-300 bike or $400, I mean, I don't know what mine costs, but, you know, for a few bucks, 20-30 bucks, you put a couple of tires on the bike and the kid's got a new bike, relatively new bike. It's really there to meant for, just because something doesn't have value to you, it may hold value to somebody else. So there's all kinds of weird things in there, fans, sump pumps, bicycles, I mean, toys, like Julie said, anything that that's still workable and you may think that somebody else can use it. It's really cool that you just go in, you put it on the shelf, other guys will put it on the shelf, you just give it to them, and then somebody can walk in there with their kid and they're like, oh, I can, and they get it for free. It's free, everything's free, so if you have something worth something, give it to them, and don't throw it in the garbage, right?
I mean, the great part,
trash bill.
I mean, the great part of it is we've all got things that are, you know, looking forward to bulky item pickup, because we've got things that are fine, that we that don't use anymore, but no choice but to throw them away. What happens at bulky item pickup is you put perfectly good things out, and people would say and take them, and now we've got a vehicle to get rid of the things that are perfectly good, and, you know, besides waiting for a bulky item
Your
pickup.
kid
which we
grows
have-
out of a toy, perhaps,
every
right?
5 years.
Yeah, how often do all these little kids grow out of toys? And
And
you're like,
bulky item
"All right."
pickups on our next.
It'll be on the next agenda.
It's on the next agenda.
Take a look at that, it's not gonna work.
Yeah, well, it's something, so.
That's all I have.
Okay, so, all right, so any selectmen announcements?
Not at this time.
All right.
We're gonna talk about bulky item that we got the email next week,
Let's
right?
put next week. It's,
Okay, boss.
Next week, we're gonna have
I put it
a-
on.
Motion to adjourn.
Well, selectmen's, next selectmen's meeting is Tuesday, March 3rd at 5 PM. Motion to adjourn, second.
I'm sorry, can I make a plea? I'm representing CVE. Can I make a plea for the next selectmen's meeting
Sure.
to discuss tax pilot? I'm Ryan Young, I represent CVE. The company we own the land at 0 Wing Lane. The solar
Oh,
farm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mr. Rocket's old,
Rocket Solar, correct, yep.
I
Yep.
think we've got that on the agenda.
It's on
next-
the agenda.
We've got that on the agenda.
we just got
next
bumped a
time.
couple times. We're really desperate. We've been trying to reach since November and holding up our financing. So I know you guys are busy and I know things are getting moved
Yeah,
around.
we bumped
and
you, we
fluctuate.
bumped you to, that was on the agenda for tonight, but the agenda was so full that
Yes.
that did get bumped
Okay.
for next
So we
time.
think it'll be this coming Tuesday?
That is on the agenda for Tuesday the 3rd. March 3rd, yeah, next Tuesday. There were a couple of things we had to move out just because the agenda tonight was
Yeah.
too
Pilots.
pilots. So it's the tax agreement,
Tax agreement,
the
yeah.
tax agreement on this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, appreciate it.
So
That's all I
that
need.
is on the agenda for next Tuesday. It was supposed to be tonight, but
No
we
problem.
were just loaded up.
That's prerogative, yes.
So,
No problem. We'll see
all
you
right,
then.
thank you,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, motion, are we adjourned? Did we voted? I'm in favor.
I
I don't know if you're.
Are we, motion to adjourn?
That's
Aye.
the
Yes.
last.
Yes, all right, we're adjourned.